Chapter 345. June Moxie clicked his tongue and said, "I don't know how such a small thing like you got injured to this extent. TSK, it's really strange. Why are the meridians in your body like the bark of a 100-year-old pine tree? They're so brittle, and there are cracks everywhere. If you move a little more, they'll break. You're lucky to have met me. If it wasn't me, if it was someone else, even if they wanted to save you, they wouldn't be able to do anything. It's rare for me to be so kind." While he was talking, he gathered an exceptionally dense and pure spiritual energy in his palm, and slowly poured it out. The cool and refreshing spiritual energy flowed into the little critter's meridians like a gurgling stream. This sudden influx of spiritual energy instantly made the little critter's spirit rise. The indescribable pain in its body was alleviated by a lot as the spiritual energy flowed into its meridians. On the contrary, it felt incomparably comfortable, and it almost moaned out loud. The spiritual energy slowly soothed the weak meridians that were on the verge of breaking apart. Wherever it passed, it was like the most brilliant mender, slowly mending the damaged areas bit by bit. It advanced in a gradual manner, and didn't let even a drop of water leak out. Why does this look so much like a Qigong deviation? Moreover, it's a very high-level Big Boss Qigong deviation. Afterwards, it was forcibly stopped by some kind of supreme divine power. But you're just a little guy, how could you possibly cause such a big commotion? Could it be that I've guessed wrongly? You're not a little guy at all, but the #1 big boss of the Tianfa forest? June Moxie chuckled. He felt that what he had just said was very funny, and laughed for a while. The little critter rolled its eyelids, and looked at him. Its eyes revealed a strong disdain. "Little thing, are you still not convinced? If you're a super beast king, then wouldn't I be the super invincible #1 expert in the universe? Big Brother can easily kill you with one hand now. Of course, I definitely won't lay my hands on such a cute little thing like you." June Moxie looked at the little critter's very human-like expression, and couldn't help but be startled. He laughed mischievously, and freed one of his hands to scratch the little critter's pink little nose. The little critter's throat made a soft sound, and its two big eyes revealed a trace of embarrassment. June Dashao teased the little critter like this, and he didn't know how much time had passed. It might have been a moment, or it might have been a very long time. Oh. Little thing actually knows to be shy. June Mo Xia used the Xiantian spiritual qi in the Hongjun pagoda to repair the little beast's damaged meridians. He heaved a sigh of relief and teased it. He then casually slapped the little critter's tender little butt. The little critter Qigong's body trembled, and the little critter trembled. Just as he was about to struggle, June Mo Xia forcefully pressed him down. "The injury is healed, but it has just been mended. Don't move recklessly. If you move recklessly, you will immediately return to your original state. June QED June, it, SQT, and it." He gently slapped the little critter, and found that the little critter's hair was fine, and its flesh was soft as if it didn't have any bones. It felt especially good to the touch, and he couldn't help but need it a few more times. "Anyway, you won't understand what I'm saying." June Moxie couldn't help but feel like a child, and he smiled until his eyes couldn't be seen. He picked up the little critter's soft body, and brought it close to his eyes. Their eyes met, and the little critter actually turned its head away in embarrassment. "Huh?" June Moxie was overjoyed, and he used all his strength to search the little critter's body. His white fur became a bit messy, and he suddenly thought of something. "Ah. You actually know to be shy. Damn it, it can't be a girl, right? It should be a female, right?" The little beast's entire body trembled violently. Suddenly, its eyes opened wide in disbelief. Its entire body's skin instantly turned red like fresh blood. Even its white fur had turned red, its body was completely stiff, and it didn't move a single inch. "If it's a female, then so be it. Even if you're a female, I'm a man, but I can't rape you no matter what. Tell me, what are you afraid of?" June Moxie looked at the little critter with interest, and he reached out to tease it a few times. The little critter let out a strange cry, and it finally came back to its senses. It realized the viciousness of the guy in front of it, and it was extremely humiliated. Its body twitched and trembled a few times, and its eyes widened to the maximum. Suddenly, its head tilted, and it actually fainted. "Damn it, you can't take it anymore? Hey, I didn't do anything to you, I just lightly touched you, and you have such a big reaction. Could it be that this is your Achilles heel?" Jun Moxie was a little puzzled, and he scratched his head with his fingers, and his face was full of bewilderment. At this moment, Jun Dashao suddenly shivered, and he suddenly felt a bone-chilling murderous intent. And that murderous intent was so strong that it was something that Dashao had never seen in his 2 lives. Even if it was Jun Moxie's own murderous intent of the evil monarch, compared to this chilling murderous intent, it would be an exaggeration to say that it paled in comparison. It was like comparing a small grass to a big tree, and there was absolutely no comparison between the two. This was a destructive murderous intent. At this moment, Jun Moxie didn't even have time to feel where this murderous intent came from, and he already clearly felt that he had been completely locked on. As if he had fallen into an ice cave. He couldn't escape even if he wanted to go up to heaven or down to hell. For a moment, Jun Moxie was drenched in cold sweat. Such a huge, dense, and terrifying murderous intent could actually cause one's thinking to slow down, and even his entire soul to become a little stiff. Under the shroud of this murderous intent, it seemed as if there was not a single bit of life in the entire world. His eyes were filled with the intention to die. It was hard to imagine that there would be such a terrifyingly strong person in the depths of this Tianfa forest. Jun Moxie suddenly regretted that he had been too careless when he had come in. Jun Moxie had seen many experts since he had crossed over. But those Tian Xian and Shen Xian couldn't even be compared to this murderous person. Even the great master Li Ju Tian couldn't compare. The intensity of this murderous intent had obviously exceeded the scope of Jun Moxie's imagination. Perhaps this was reasonable. After all, there were so many heavenly treasures in this place, and so many precious elixirs. So, it would be illogical if there wasn't a powerful guardian in this place. Jun Moxie's first instinct was to escape into the Hongjun Pagoda to take refuge. This was very frightening. This extremely frightening murderous intent wasn't something that he could deal with. In fact, he wouldn't have been a match for this person even if he had been at his strongest in his previous life. Jun Moxie could even imagine how earth-shattering this murderous intent would be if it were to be unleashed. He wouldn't be able to evade or resist this attack. But just as Jun Mo Xia was about to escape, this terrifying murderous aura disappeared abruptly. Just like how it came, without any warning, suddenly appearing, and then mysteriously disappearing. It had come in a hurry, and had left in a hurry, without a trace. The world had been restored to its original clarity in a split second. That was close. Jun Moxie panted a few times. He had a lingering fear in his heart. His spirit and the Hongjun Pagoda became one. Then, he stealthily spread out his spirit sense. However, he couldn't find any target even after searching for a while. This is really strange. Jun Moxie frowned as he held the little thing in his arms. It must be known that Jun Dashao's current strength wasn't good, but his spirit sense was exceptionally strong. In fact, it wasn't any weaker than Shen Xian's. After fusing with the Hongjun Pagoda's Xiantian spiritual energy, his strength had increased even more. Even the great masters and the beast kings of Tianfa would have to bow down to him. Since the beginning of his cultivation, no one had been able to surpass him. Even the owner of that terrifying murderous intent was inferior to his spirit sense. Moreover, it was very well hidden. No one would be able to see through its mysteries. Therefore, Dashao had dared to release his spirit sense in order to find out the identity of that expert. Unfortunately, his spirit sense didn't find anything even after searching in all directions. It was as if there wasn't such a person around. However, he didn't realize that the little thing in his arms had already woken up. That pair of beautiful big eyes were staring at Jun Moxie. The expression in their eyes was extremely complicated and unpredictable. There was even a faint ominous glint in their eyes. Those blurred eyes were sometimes indignant, sometimes shy, sometimes overflowing with murderous intent, and sometimes perplexed. Such complex emotions appeared in the eyes of a small animal. It was very strange. However, June Moxie's entire mind was focused on that mysterious murderous intent that had appeared and disappeared mysteriously. So, he didn't notice this. He had searched everywhere in the surroundings, but he hadn't searched his own arms. This seemingly harmless little thing happened to be the darkest under the light. It was also the person that June Moxie was most afraid of so far. It was indisputably a true peak expert. "Ha, little thing, you're awake. Why didn't you move even though you're awake? You really deserve a spanking. Are you hungry?" June Moxie was finally sure that the mysterious murderous intent had completely disappeared. No matter who that person was, he was temporarily not a threat to him. His mind became active again. He lowered his head and saw that the little thing in his arms was staring at him. He couldn't help but scold it with a smile. The little thing immediately closed its eyes again and tightly hugged him. "You're still angry with me? Isn't it just touching your little butt? Is it worth it?" June Moxie curled his lips disdainfully and smacked the little thing's butt twice. Then, his palm stayed on it and kneaded the little butt like kneading dough. He said with a face full of enjoyment, "This feeling is really TSK, it's incurable. Little thing, can you follow me from now on? If you follow me, I will give you delicious food and fun things every day. Others don't get this treatment. I don't have any requirements. I just want to rub your butt every day." The little thing looked at him with shame and indignation. If it wasn't for the fact that its meridians had just been repaired and it was at its weakest, it would have almost swallowed this shameless guy. "Who cares about your food and fun things? Follow you? What's so good about letting you rub my butt every day? What nonsense are you talking about? Good lad, it's true that you helped me today. But if I don't return the humiliation you gave me 1,000 times over, I won't be called, just you wait." "Humph. Unwilling. You still dare to be unwilling? I have done you a favor. Even if you don't want to, you still have to be willing." June Moxie snorted and continued to knead. Suddenly, he had a strange thought and said, "You're so small and you're considered a female? Then if you have a child in the future, you'll have to feed it, right? But why didn't I notice that you have this equipment? Is it because it's too small? Is there something wrong with my eyes? I actually didn't notice." The little beast's entire body quivered. It glared with extreme grief and indignation as it watched the hateful brat in front of it turn its body over again and carefully search for something on its chest. Finally, TSK, there really is that thing. Why is it so small? It's not even the size of a mung bean. Your son is so pitiful. Looks like he's also a starving fellow." June Moxie finally found his target. He smiled evilly and stretched out his little finger to press it. Then, he rubbed it and pinched it with 2 fingers. The little fellow's 2 hind legs kicked twice. Its whole body suddenly flushed red and its eyes stared blankly. A strange sound that sounded like it was crying and moaning came out of its throat. Finally, its head tilted and it fainted again. It fainted twice because of this guy. Too much of a bully, too much of a hoodlum. When it woke up again, it discovered that it was being carried out. It was swaying in the air and it felt extremely uncomfortable. It turned out that after June Moxie was busy for a while, he suddenly felt that he needed to pee. However, the little thing was so smooth and comfortable in his hands. It felt so wonderful. He really couldn't bear to put it down. So, he simply picked up the little thing and walked out. He wanted to find a corner to relieve his physiological needs. He lifted his robe with one hand and unbuttoned his pants. After a while, the underwear inside hung down to his feet, revealing a pair of slightly furry thighs. Then, he walked out while swaying his head. Coincidentally, it fell right in front of the little thing's eyes. Anyway, it was just a little beast. What was there to be afraid of? Could it be that it had to be shy in front of its own dog and not pee? So, June Dashao didn't think too much about it. Splash, 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 splash. A stream of sparkling water. Ding dong came to his heart's content. His whole body was relaxed. The little thing was carried out by him. It was puzzled. However, it didn't expect that this guy would unbutton his pants without any hesitation. It was so shy that it whimpered. Its two front paws covered its pair of beautiful big eyes. June Moxie saw its reaction and was very amused. He laughed wildly. After he was done, he shivered. He didn't even put on his belt. He just left it open. Then, he pried open the two front paws of the little thing. With a flip of his hand, the little thing's eyes that had just opened came into close contact with his huge body. Immediately, it let out a cry. Its whole body turned red again. It closed its eyes tightly. At the same time, its two front paws grabbed fiercely. It simply wanted to tear young Master June's body into thousands of pieces. June Moxie's movements were extremely fast. With a whoosh, he had already lifted it up. He even mischievously blew into its mouth to make it open its eyes. Then, he said disdainfully, "See? Feel inferior now, ha ha ha." The little thing looked at him with grief and indignation. It looked at him with tears in its eyes. It looked at him with so much pain that it wanted to die. It didn't know anything anymore. It only felt that its mind was blank. It was so ashamed that it wanted to die. "Oh, let me die. I don't have the face to live anymore. I don't want to live anymore." The domineering June Dashao didn't care about its reaction. He hummed a little tune and slowly pulled up his pants. Seeing the little thing in his hand struggling, June Dashao glared at it and threatened, "Stop it. If you move again, I'll stuff you into my pants." "Stuff, into my pants?" The little thing instantly stiffened. It really didn't dare to move. If this guy stuffed it into his pants, even if it could commit suicide in time, it would be a laughing stock for thousands of years. Looking at this guy's appearance, he had even done such a shameless thing before. So, what else couldn't he do? Today, it could be said that it had tasted all the humiliation it could receive in its lifetime. How could this young human be so evil? He was evil to an indescribable extent. He was too evil, too shameless. June Moxie placed the stiff little thing in the stone room. Then, he glared at it and berated, "Don't move here. This brother will go out to gather some herbs first. I'll take you away when I come back. Be good." Then, he turned around and walked out. He walked to the entrance of the cave. Then, he jumped back, grabbed the little thing, and kneaded it a few times. He laughed heartily and said, "It's really comfortable. This brother is addicted to it. Don't run around." Then, he turned around and walked out. "Don't run around. Wait for you to come back and then ravage me." The little thing hatefully looked at June Moxie's back as he walked out. It fiercely glared at him a few times. "Bastard! It must be you who stole my Tian Fa forest's sacred fruit. Then, you specially came here to humiliate me. Humph. You've helped me a lot, but I won't let you off. There will come a day when I'll make you want to cry but have no tears. You'll be like me. You'll be in a state where you can neither live nor die. First, I'll explode your that. Then, I'll make you do that. Then, I'll cut off your that. Who asked you to scare me?" The little thing's eyes were brimming with tears of grievance. It turned around, and slowly went to the innermost part of the stone room. It was unknown what mechanism it had pressed, but it suddenly disappeared without a trace. It had been several hundred years since it had come out of its mother's womb. So, it had long forgotten what it felt like to shed tears. But, it hadn't expected that it would be humiliated by this guy to the point that its eyes were brimming with tears a few times today. This was intolerable. "I'll recover completely in a day at most. Although, I've recovered so quickly because of this boy's help. But, I will definitely take revenge. I've already remembered your smell. And, I've also remembered your appearance. So, I won't have to worry about not being able to find you. There hasn't been a single person in the entire continent who has been able to escape my pursuit for several hundred years. Just you wait. Humph humph. Hateful brat, shameless guy, you big scoundrel, I'll remember this for you. June Moxie had finally gathered enough medicinal ingredients. So, he went on a big sweep. It was as if he had truly returned from a rewarding journey. He felt extremely comfortable. But, when he returned to the stone room, he was immediately dumbfounded. Only a black robe was left in the stone room. That extremely adorable little beast was actually gone. It had completely disappeared without a trace. Crap! Where did that little thing go? Why did it run away without even saying a word? June Dashao was somewhat indignant. I've healed your injuries. I even said that I would give you delicious food and fun things to play with. But, you actually didn't even say a word. You ungratefully ran away just like that. You're really an ingrate. However, June Dashao didn't give up. He carefully searched in a big circle. Then, he finally confirmed that the little thing had indeed ungratefully ran away. Wait until I catch you again. See if I don't need your little butt until it's rotten. June Moxie swore hatefully. His heart was filled with indescribable disappointment. He had wanted to bring this little thing back so that he could tease it often. Moreover, this little thing was so adorable that it was almost invincible. Perhaps, it could also make Guan Qinghan happy. So, she wouldn't have to be so preoccupied all day. But, his wishful thinking had clearly fallen through. You're really not tactful. You just wait for me. I'll use you to wipe my butt the next time I see you. I'll teach you a good lesson. Humph. June Moxie cursed in his heart. But, he was filled with joy when he thought of the huge amount of elixirs in the Hongjun Pagoda. This trip to the Tianfa forest had resulted in a bountiful harvest. In fact, it had exceeded his imagination. He had really struck it rich. June Moxie sighed in satisfaction. Then, his body suddenly rose up and disappeared in midair. He had already activated the yin-yang escape. He had silently passed through the forest like a gust of wind. His target was the Tiannan city. There was only one herb left that he urgently needed at present, the 9-Xian root. Grandpa June's cultivation would soar to the level of Shenxian once he got his hands on the 9-Xian root. Moreover, he was confident that he would surpass Shenxian in one fell swoop. In fact, he would reach the level of Shenxian in a single bound. Grandfather's cultivation would still be far from enough when that time comes. But, it would be second to none in Tianxiang City, or perhaps the entire Tianxiang Empire. He believed that even the Emperor of Tianxiang would have to worry about the consequences of offending a powerhouse like Shenxian if he wanted to deal with the June family. Even if he didn't consider the June family's enormous military power, he would still have to worry about the consequences of offending a powerhouse like Shenxian. This kind of consequence wasn't something that could be casually endured. Even the emperor of a country wasn't an exception to this. An enemy of Shenxian would often mean a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. June Moxie would then be able to relax. He would then be able to concentrate on dealing with the third uncle's matter. The Silver Blizzard City, even if he couldn't slaughter the entire Shao family for the time being, he would still have to rescue Han Yanyao first. This was Jun Wui's biggest worry. It was also Han Yanyao's hope. Moreover, it was June Moxie's responsibility. It was a promise that he had made in his heart. It was already the night of the second day when Jun Imo Xia returned to Southern Heaven City. In other words, he had stayed in the Tianfa forest for a full day and a night. Boy, where did you go? You took so long to come back. June Moxie had just returned when he was confronted by Jun Wui. The three uncles of Shenxian were glaring at him as if they wanted to eat him alive. In fact, it seemed as if they were about to rush up and beat him up. His precious nephew had mysteriously disappeared for a full day and a night. Jun Wui's hair had almost turned white from worry. This was the Tiannan city, the territory of the Shuihan Manor. Jun Wui and the three brothers of the Dongfang family would have gone to the Shui Hun Manor or the Silver Blizzard City if Jun Moxie hadn't returned. I just went out for a stroll. I didn't go far. Jun Moxie rolled his eyes. Then, he quickly slipped past the four and disappeared. Are you kidding me? Can I really tell you that I went for a stroll into the Tianfa forest yesterday? And, I even had a very friendly and pleasant meeting with the 7 Beast Kings. Both sides were friendly and had the same interests. And, both sides had reached a mutually beneficial cooperation agreement. The 4 men looked at each other in dismay. You just went for a stroll? This is the first time you've come to Tiannan City. You're not familiar with the people and the place. So, where did you go for a stroll? Moreover, you went for a full day and a night. Aren't you too good at strolling? You didn't go far. Then, you should have strolled all the way back to Tianxiang City. This bastard kid, don't you know that the 4 of us were worried to death? However, it was clear that Jun Moxie didn't want to talk about it. Anyway, he had returned safely. So, the 4 men weren't in the mood to pursue this matter. Jun Wui knew that his nephew was truly remarkable. Moreover, he was in Tiannan City. So, he wouldn't be too worried even if he didn't return for a few days. Revised Draft. Chapter 346. I just went out for a stroll. I didn't go far. Jun Moxie rolled his eyes, and quickly slipped past the 4 men, and disappeared. Are you kidding me? Can I really tell you that I went for a stroll into the Tianfa forest yesterday, and had a very friendly and pleasant meeting with the 7 Beast Kings? Both sides had reached a mutually beneficial cooperation agreement based on the premise that we shared the same interests. The 4 men looked at each other in dismay. You just went for a stroll? This is the first time you've come to the Southern Heaven City, and you're not familiar with the people and the place. Where did you go for a stroll? And you went for a day and a night? Aren't you too good at strolling? You didn't go far. You could have strolled all the way back to the Tianxiang City. Doesn't this bastard know that the 4 of us are worried to death? However, it was clear that Jun Moxie didn't want to talk about it. Anyway, he had returned safely, and the 4 men weren't in the mood to pursue the matter. Jun Wui knew that his nephew was truly remarkable. Moreover, he was in the Southern Heaven City. So, he wouldn't have been too worried even if he hadn't returned for a few days. However, the 4 of them hadn't expected that Jun Xia would go out for a stroll. It wasn't too far. He had only gone to the core area of Tianfa forest to pick some medicinal herbs, and some small beasts, chrysanthemums and so on. The 4 men looked at each other, and shook their heads. They were about to follow him in. They had been worried for a whole night. So, they could finally relax when they saw that Jun Dashao had returned. The war would begin tomorrow, and everyone's minds were heavy at the moment. So, they decided to take a good rest. Suddenly, a soldier at the gate came to report that the young master of the Shui Hun Manor, Li Tingyun, had come to visit. Jun Wui pondered for a moment, and then said, please. The 3rd master of the Shui Hun Manor had decided that Jun Wui would be the commander-in-chief of the decisive battle, and that he would be the vanguard. However, the Shui Hun Manor had suddenly sent their 3rd master to replace Jun Wui as the supreme commander of the Shui Hun Manor. This was rather baffling. This so-called commander-in-chief position didn't have much real authority at all. If he won, he wouldn't get any credit. If he lost, he would have to take the blame. If he lost, he would be the first to die in battle. He even had to guard against the plots of his own enemies. It was a 100% strenuous and unrewarding role. No one understood what Li Ju Tian meant by this. Why send the 3rd master of Shenxian's cultivation to die when they already have Jun Wui, the first scapegoat? Wasn't that too much of a pity? However, this was the opinion of the number 1 expert in the Allied forces. No one dared to refute it. Therefore, the final candidate for the commander was temporarily put aside. However, there were only two candidates. It was either the third elder or Jun Wui. Li Tingyun's arrival was presumably related to this matter. So, everyone wanted to see what he had to say. All the major families and forces had sent their experts to participate in the preparations for the war in the morning. And, the Shuihun Manor and the Silver Blizzard City obviously didn't dare to be negligent. After all, these two families had pushed Jun Wui into a desperate situation. And, they couldn't afford to be negligent either. So, wouldn't they be despised by the whole world if they didn't do anything in the first place? Everyone knew that their chances of victory were very slim. In fact, they didn't even have the slightest chance of success. However, they still had to send people even if it meant throwing away their lives. Jun Wui, the Dongfang family, the Duanmu family, and the Sikong family had come to mediate. So, the Silver Blizzard City had dispatched the 3rd, 6th, and 9th elders, Mu Shuetong and Xiao Han, Tian Xian, and the 7 swords of the Silver Blizzard City. It could be said that this was more than 70% of the Silver Blizzard City's total strength. So, it couldn't be said that they weren't strong enough. After all, the 3rd, 6th, and 9th elders wouldn't be justified if they were to dispatch the 7 swords. Moreover, the 7 swords of the Silver Blizzard City had the most formidable sword formation. So, their strength would be weakened if they were to be separated. So, they had no choice but to send all 7 of them. Mu Shuetong and Xiao Han were the real additions to the battle. After all, experts like Tian Xian weren't as rare as they used to be in this place. However, the Silver Blizzard City's calculations were sound. They had so many experts to protect them. So, they wouldn't die even if they were to lose this battle. The Silver Blizzard City's losses wouldn't be too great. But they would be throwing away their lives if they sent too few people. The Silver Blizzard City's other experts, the 2nd, 5th, and 8th elders, couldn't go because of Xiao Buyu's enmity with the Dongfang family. Moreover, the 3 members of the Dongfang family had come to fight. Otherwise, wouldn't it be terrible if they got into a conflict with their own people? Xiao Buyu was the person in charge of the Silver Blizzard City's operation. He was gauging the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a petty man. It didn't matter what kind of personal enmity he had with the Dongfang family. But, this was a matter of life and death for the future of the human race. So, he couldn't bring himself to bring up old scores for the sake of the bigger picture. The Duanmu family and the Sikong family had always been friends with the 3 Dongfang brothers. So, they had seen that Dongfang Wenqing was obviously standing on Jun Wui's side. So, they had naturally stood on their side as well. The Shuihun Manor had also put in a lot of effort. They had dispatched more than half of their manpower. Among them were 300 Yu Xian experts, 100 Earth Xian experts, 30 Tian Xian experts, and 5 Shin Xian experts. The Shuihun Manor's manpower was the best among all the forces. The weaker Bailey family had dispatched 3 people. Apart from the 2 Tian Xian experts, only Yu Xian's Bailey Luo Yun was among them. This decision made all the great clans present sigh inwardly. They had unknowingly looked down on the Heavenly Tao sect a little. Such a young genius is being treated like this by the Bailey family. They are too short-sighted. Regardless of the enmity between them, they can't live under the same sky. But they should have supported this peerless genius even if they couldn't live under the same sky. Bailey Luo Yun should have been expelled from the family in the most severe punishment. Bailey Luo Yun's surname will still be Bailey even if he becomes a vagabond of the Jianghu. So, he will still be a member of the Bailey family in the eyes of the people of Jianghu. Moreover, he will become another Shin Xian if he's given a few decades of cultivation. In fact, he might even become a great master. Bailey Luo Yun will become the guardian of the Bailey family at that time. Bailey Luo Yun and the Bailey family might have some enmity at that time. But, anyone who wants to deal with the Bailey family will have to consider Bailey Luo Yun's attitude. He will be a threat at the very least. And, the Bailey family will rise along with him. But, the Bailey family wants to destroy this genius here. They can't wait to put him to death. This made everyone despise the Bailey family's decision. They are a big family. They don't have foresight. They don't see the big picture. They are narrow-minded. How can they achieve great things? Some people had even asserted that the Bailey family has begun to decline from now on. In fact, they are done for. Jun Wui had only selected 300 people from the 20,000 soldiers that he had led. These people included Yu Xian. The remaining people were all at the initial stage of the Earth Xian realm. Moreover, these people were the bodyguards that had been sent by the big families to protect the young masters. Jun Wui understood the emperor's intentions as soon as these people had been selected. The young masters of the big families would certainly be safe under his careful protection. However, he and these people would be the ones who would be sent to their deaths. The strength of the big families in the capital was quite scattered. So, they would be much more stable after this reorganization. These people weren't considered experts in the whole world. But they would be a considerable force in the Tianxiang city. After all, when the tiger is away, the monkey will be the king. However, the strength of the big families would be greatly weakened if most of these people were to die here. And these treasures of the big families would naturally be indignant if their bodyguards were to die. So, they would return to their families and see their brothers and sisters at home. So, they would feel even more unbalanced in their hearts. So, it wouldn't matter if they were to fight for power. Or if they were to overthrow the position of the heir to the throne, it would cause a huge change. And this would further divide and eliminate the already shrinking strength of the big families. The result of this gradual shrinking could only be the emperor using his imperial power to hold these families even more tightly in the palm of his hand. When the time comes, the patriarchs of the big families would join forces to threaten the imperial power. And that would be a thing of the past. Such a profound calculation. Such an exquisite layout. So, His Majesty the Emperor's far-sighted planning has already reached this point. The handsome Li Tingyun was dressed in gaudy clothes while Elder San was lost in his thoughts. He wore a shiny silver robe, and looked like a walking lighthouse. Jun Wui and Dongfang Wenjian were flabbergasted. They couldn't believe their eyes. He's dressed like this. Isn't he too coquettish? He would have been a typical live target if he had been an assassin. His aim would have been bad. But he would have been ruthlessly beaten if he had thrown a sword at him. Li Tingyun walked in with his 2 followers. He cupped his fists and spoke in an arrogant manner, "General Jun, I've taken the liberty to visit you. I hope 3rd General Jun won't take offense." "It's nothing. The young master is too polite." Jun Wui returned the courtesy without batting an eyelid. "I don't know what the young master has come here for." Li Tingyun chuckled. He looked left and right. He wanted to say something, but he hesitated. Dongfang Wenqing and the others chuckled. They knew that he had some misgivings. So, they tactfully took their leave. Jun Moxie walked out from behind the curtain as soon as the 3 of them left. There were 2 silhouettes sitting behind the curtain. They were Guan Qinghan and Dugus Xiaoyi. Jun Moxie and Guan Qinghan had some guesses about Li Tingyun's purpose in coming here. So, they had come out early. Dugus Xiaoyi had naturally followed them. Everyone here is on the same side. So, the young master can speak his mind. Jun Wui had a faint smile on his face. But there was a faint coldness in his eyes. Jun Wui wasn't a fool. So, he had naturally guessed Li Tingyun's purpose in coming here. This young master will speak frankly in that case. Li Tingyun's smile revealed a trace of confidence. Li Tingyun's smile exposed a trace of self-confidence. He didn't care about Jun Xia who had just come out. In fact, Li Tingyun didn't even care about the entire Jun family. After all, the Jun family was nothing in front of a colossus like the Shuihun Manor. This young master of the manor met Guan Qinghan by chance the last time I was touring the Tianxiang Empire. Miss Guan was a celestial being. I've been longing for her ever since. And I haven't been able to forget her ever since. Li Tingyun smiled elegantly and said, "It is reported that young Lady Guan has been widowed for many years. But, she is still the Jun family's eldest granddaughter-in-law. Everyone knows that this marriage shouldn't be valid. In fact, it's only a title in name at best. Tingyun has come here today to request Third Master Jun to set young Lady Guan free. So, we can have a wonderful marriage. Wouldn't that be perfect for both sides? My Shuehan manor will also return the favor if the Jun family is willing to let us go." Li Tingyun waved his hand to stop Jun Wui from speaking. He then continued, "Third Master Jun must have noticed that the Shuehan manor's third master had been instructed by me to volunteer to take command of this decisive battle. Everyone knows that this decisive battle isn't an ordinary one. In fact, we'll be facing high-level Xian beasts. And, I'm sure that we'll meet a miserable end if we're not careful. General Jun's strength is naturally very high. And, his attainments in Xian Qi, he's also outstanding. Tingyun admires this very much. However, General Jun's body is handicapped. So, I'm sure that General Jun knows that he'll be facing a high-level Xian beast if he goes up. And, he won't be able to survive." Jun Wui lowered his eyelids to hide the anger in his eyes. He then said in a deep voice, "The young master of the manor's purpose in coming here isn't just to lament about the danger of my life. Tell me your true intentions." Well, General Jun is a straightforward man. So, this young master of the manor will also speak frankly. General Jun won't have to die as long as you agree to my request. Li Tingyun was getting tired of beating around the bush. So, he got straight to the point. My Shuehan manor will seize command of this battle with a strong stance when the time comes. And, we won't tarnish the Jun family's prestige. The Jun family will be safe from the Xian beasts under the protection of my Shuehan manor. Moreover, we'll do our best to mediate even if the Silver Blizzard City attacks us in the dark." Li Tingyun narrowed his eyes. His face revealed a well-thought-out expression. This young master of the manor knows what General Jun is worried about. So, I won't make things difficult for you. And, the Jun family's only contribution isn't a single woman. In fact, it's a woman who has nothing to do with the Jun family. Listen to young Master Li. Is this woman worthless? Jun Moxie suddenly interjected. This woman, the third young master's words don't seem to be in line with his family's status. I'm very surprised. Li Tingyun raised his eyelids in Lengleng and said, "How many women in this world are valuable? Even if they are successful, they're only relying on the prestige of their husband's family, that's all. Families like yours and mine gift each other a few horses, a few dogs, or even a few women. Isn't that a very common thing? It's just a game, why make such a big fuss? Only play around?" Jun Wui's voice became cold. In fact, it sounded like the cold winds of a snowy mountain. "Young Master Li, is this your condition?" "My condition is very sincere. Don't tell me that the General Jun is still not satisfied?" Li Tingyun heard the coldness in Jun Wui's words. So, he glared at Jun Wui with an ominous glint in his eyes. Then, his voice became even more threatening. "Third General Jun, you must reconsider. Tomorrow will be your death anniversary if you refuse my sincere offer. You'll have to face crazy Xian beasts and sharp old enemies. But, you'll also have to deal with an even more powerful force. So, you'll have to use an unrelated woman in exchange for your life and the safety of your entire family. I believe that anyone would know how to choose. Moreover, this decision will bring great happiness to that woman. General Jun, you won't be so unwise when faced with the two paths of life and death, right? Unrelated? Guan Qinghan is a member of my Jun family. At least, she still is." Jun Wui Lengleng looked at him and said, "I won't allow outsiders to humiliate her as long as she's a member of the Jun family. Young Master Li, you don't need to worry about this Jun family's survival. Men, see the guest out. Jun Wui, don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. This young master of the manor has come to negotiate with you because I'm giving you face. But, I've also offered generous conditions. Do you really think that you're a big shot? Li Tingyun stood up and spoke in a ruthless manner, you don't know what's good for you. So, why should I worry about you if you're bent on courting death? It doesn't matter if you die or not. Do you think that you can stop me from obtaining Guanqing Han even if you don't die? Jun Moxie clicked his tongue twice and said, young Master Li is very strange. Since when did you have the right to worry about our Jun family? Who do you think you are? The only son of the great Master Zhu Tian, the dignified young master of the Shuihun Manor. So, this is how he behaves. You've really broadened my horizons. No wonder my sister-in-law doesn't like you. I believe that any other woman wouldn't like you either. That's because you have a father who claims to be the second most powerful man in the world. The Shuihun Manor is really stupid. Very well. Jun Moxie, you'll pay for your indiscreet words. You'll have to wait for your third uncle's corpse tomorrow. Li Tingyun snorted. He flicked his sleeves and stood up, this young master of the manor doesn't want to argue with you. Jun Moxie, you're not worthy. Your Jun family doesn't deserve to bargain with me. Jun Moxie sneered and said, it's hard to say who's worthy or not. At least, there's a toad in front of me who wants to eat the flesh of a swan. Do you think you're worthy? You! Li Tingyun's anger had just risen, but it disappeared in a flash. Then, Leng Leng continued, Li Tingyun, can't get a woman I want. Jun Moxie, you'll be the one in the southern heaven city if you lose the protection of your third uncle and his 3 uncles. Tomorrow, it'll be your third uncle's. Maybe the day after that, it'll be yours, brat. Are the 3 uncles of Shenxian's that great? Jun Moxie, the strength you're relying on isn't worth mentioning in my eyes. Let me tell you, in this world, a bigger fist is the most important thing. I've always known that a bigger fist is the most important thing. Would the Shuihun Manor have become a nest of Xian beasts if the Xian beasts weren't so powerful? Would the insufferably arrogant Great Master Zhu Tian have issued a supreme summon if the Xian beasts weren't strong enough? You're still being so arrogant at this point. You're shameless. Jun Moxie silently shook his head, the Shuihun Manor is a dead duck with a stubborn mouth. Let's see which family will cry after tomorrow's war. Well, let's see which family will cry. Jun Moxie, you brat, just wait to wear mourning clothes. Li Tingyun turned around to leave. He stopped at the door, and asked, Jun Wui, are you sure, you won't regret it? Get lost. This was Jun Wui's reply. Jun Wui's patience with this shameless young master of the Shuihun Manor had already reached its limit. A sharp light flashed in Li Tingyun's eyes. He snorted heavily, and turned around to leave. Young Master Tingyun, wait. Jun Dashao suddenly called out to Li Tingyun. Li Tingyun turned his head and snorted, are you afraid now? Jun Dashao, quickly advise your third uncle and your grandfather. There's no need to sacrifice the entire Jun family for a woman. A wise man submits to the circumstances. Ah! Young Master Tingyun, you've misunderstood the reason why I called out to you. I'm just reminding you out of good intentions. You've got a black mark on your forehead. Your left eye is blue, and your right eye is red. You've got a stupid and unfortunate look on your face. You're going to face a bloody calamity in the near future. So, it's better to worry about your own safety instead of worrying about other people's lives. Otherwise, you'll implicate your father in case I'm right. You'll be very unfilial. Jun Dashao spoke slowly, Master Zhu Tian is more than 100 years old. I'm afraid that he won't be able to give birth to another child. Young master, please take care of yourself. You. Li Tingyun's nose almost became crooked. He snorted heavily, and swaggered away without looking back. Third uncle, has our side's personnel been determined for tomorrow's battle? Jun Moxie asked. It's been determined. The experts of the major families will be participating in this battle apart from me. I've already drawn out all of them in order to deal with this battle. Our Tianxiang Empire's military prowess is at the top of the entire continent. But when it comes to Xianqi prowess, we're at the bottom of all the powers present in this conference. This is a well-known fact. As for your 200 guards and generals, I haven't drawn out any of them. Jun Wui smiled and replied in a dull manner, we're going to lose this battle. So, why should we sacrifice so many? Jun Wui hadn't said some things clearly. But, Jun Moxie was very clear in his heart. These 200 guards are Mo Xie's core subordinates. They're also the future hope of the Jun family. So, it's enough for me to die in this battle. So, why should I sacrifice these people? Jun Moxie was moved in his heart. Jun Wui didn't know that he had the ability to protect the Jun family from harm. Therefore, he had made up his mind to sacrifice himself. But, he was still thinking about himself and the Jun family at this time. Third uncle. Jun Moxie muttered to himself for a moment. Then, he spoke in a heavy tone, don't worry, it'll be all right. The outcome of tomorrow's battle is hard to predict. In fact, the chances of defeat are quite high. But, third uncle, you'll be fine. I can vouch for this. Jun Wui looked at him for a long time. Then, he suddenly smiled and said, I hope that's the case. Then, he suddenly called out, Qing Han, can you come out now? You've been hiding and eavesdropping. You should have heard enough, right? Come out. Guan Qing Han and Dugu Xiaoyi came out in embarrassment. They looked at Jun Wui with deep worry in their eyes. This was especially true for Guan Qing Han. But, her face was full of sorrow. Jun Wui coughed twice. Then, he suddenly became silent. His eyes exposed a contradictory look. He didn't speak for a long time. Then, he spoke in a hoarse voice, the three of you are in front of me today. One of you is my nephew. One of you is the daughter-in-law of the Jun family. And, the last one is the pearl of the Dugu family. So, you can represent the Dugu family. Xiao Yi, I'll have to trouble you to be my witness. Dugu Xiaoyi didn't know what he wanted to say. But, she instinctively felt depressed. It seemed that Jun Wui was about to make an exceptionally important decision. So, she couldn't help but nod subconsciously. Guan Qing Han's heart shook. She had guessed what Jun Wui was going to do. So, she couldn't help but cry out in grief, third uncle, don't. You can't. Chapter 347. Today's first update. I'm working hard on the second update. Jun Wui smiled faintly, but he firmly shook his head, and slowly took out a token from his bosom. The surface of the token was made of copper, and the glittering gemstones on it were glittering and dazzling, forming the word Jun. On the back, there was the word order written in meticulous strokes. The Jun family's master's token. Mo Xia, your grandfather personally handed this token to me 3 months ago. From then on, Jun Wui, am the current master of the Jun family. I hold this token in my hand, and all the decisions I make are the Jun family's decisions. No one from the Jun family is allowed to disobey me. Do you understand what I'm saying? Jun Wui spoke each word in a heavy tone. After he finished speaking, he suddenly raised the token, and with a cold face, he shouted, the Jun family's third-generation daughter-in-law, Guan Qing Han, step forward and kneel. Guan Qing Han looked at the third master in fear, and saw that his expression was cold and solemn. There was no room for compromise, so she could only sigh, step forward, and kneel in front of Jun Wui. The Jun family's daughter-in-law, Guan Qing Han, has a virtuous temperament and is well-mannered. She was 20 years old, and was ordered by her parents to temporarily get engaged. Unfortunately, the Jun family's third-generation eldest son, Wu Yu, died on the battlefield before the wedding could be consummated. Guan Qing Han is in the prime of her youth, and her body is as pure as ice and as pure as jade. She has been bitterly guarding her for 5 years, and has long since completed the relationship between the two families. But the Jun family cannot delay her life. She has not married, and she has not married, and there is no such thing as a widow. Today, I, Jun Wui, as the current master of the Jun family, sign this document of separation to clear Guan Qing Han's name, and to return her freedom. From now on, the marriage of a man and a woman has nothing to do with each other. The witness, the Dugu family, Dugu Xiaoi. The direct descendant of the Jun family, Jun Moxie, can bear witness to this. The heavens and the earth bear witness to this. Guan Qing Han already knew that this would be his decision, but when these words came out of Jun Wui's mouth without any hesitation, they clearly fell into her ears. Every word seemed to fall on her heart, and she couldn't help but burst into tears. Dugu Xiaoi, who was standing at the side, had her mouth wide open. She had never imagined that she would witness such a huge event. Jun Wui's face turned cold after he finished speaking. He faced Jun Moxie and shouted, "The third generation of the Jun family, Jun Moxie, step forward and kneel." Jun Moxie was startled. "Third uncle? Is there anything else?" The third generation of the Jun family, Jun Moxie, step forward and kneel. Jun Wui repeated in a stern voice. Then, he spoke in a dreamy tone, "Moreover, I must entrust you with a very important matter. If one day, you can go to the Silver Blizzard City, and see her, please say a few words for me." Jun Wui's voice suddenly paused. Jun Moxie listened quietly, and didn't ask any questions. He knew that the her that Jun Wui was talking about was the pitiful woman who had been painstakingly guarding the snowy peak. She was also the source of all the disasters, Han Yenyao. Jun Moxie's feelings towards Han Yenyao were very complicated. There was no other reason. If it weren't for Han Yenyao, then none of these tragedies would have happened. "You're a princess of the Silver Blizzard City. So, you ran to the secular world to play. But, why did you provoke Jun Wui? Don't you know that I've been betrothed since I was a child?" Xiao Han's actions naturally deserved death. But, on the other hand, which man in this world would be so willing to wear this lush green hat? His fiancée of 10 years had suddenly run away with a strange man. Such a matter was beyond the limits of a man's endurance. Anyone would have gone crazy if they'd been in his place. However, Jun Moxie knew that love was something that couldn't be reasoned with. Even the wisest man would have turned into a fool when love had arrived. Both of them were well-mannered and restrained. But, they had developed feelings for each other. So, who could explain why this had happened? There was no why in love. He looked at Jun Wui and Han Yenyao again. Both of them had been in pain for 10 years. But, their true feelings hadn't changed. They were still infatuated and bitterly in love even though they were far apart. So, how could one not be moved even if one's heart was made of stone? Jun Moxie also knew that Jun Wui's heart must have been filled with monstrous waves. The past events of the past had flashed through his mind. And, this was the time when his emotions were the most turbulent. He had asked him to pass a message to Han Yenyao. Perhaps, this was the condensation of the third uncle's lifelong feelings. After a long time, Jun Wui gently exhaled a breath. It seemed like a sigh, but it was a sigh filled with the lingering infatuation of 3 lifetimes. The corners of his mouth revealed a trace of a desolate smile. But, it was filled with endless tenderness and sweetness. He slowly said, "Unforgettable grudges, unforgettable you. Only because of infatuation, only for you. This journey to the Yellow Springs, still has a dream. Heaven and earth, a wisp of soul." Dugu Xiaoi suddenly sobbed. Guan Qing Han's pretty face was also full of tear stains. They knew about Jun Wui's past from different channels. When they saw Jun Wui reciting these few lines of poetry, they couldn't help but shed tears of sadness. From this poem, it was enough to tell that Jun Wui and Han Yenyao loved each other deeply. The two women felt as if the softest part of their hearts had been touched. They felt overwhelmed by this feeling of despair. Unforgettable grudges, unforgettable you. Only because of infatuation, only for you. This journey to the Yellow Springs, still has a dream. heaven and earth, a wisp of soul. Even though so many disputes have occurred, I am still infatuated with you. Today, I will go to the Yellow Springs for you. But, I will still think of you. Even if I die, in the heaven and earth. I will never forget you. I will never forget you. This wisp of soul will exist forever. This is a love that will never change in life or death. Any oath, any promise, everything will be overshadowed in front of this love. June Moxie suddenly heard the third uncle's whisper in his heart. He felt his heart tremble. It turned out that the third uncle's love, hatred, and sorrow were so strong and lingering. June Moxie could hear the third uncle's undying love in this poem of 28 words. But, he could also hear the other meaning of June Wui's words. Unforgettable grudges. Unforgettable you. Grudges were ranked before you. Grudges. Obviously, in June Wui's heart, the deaths of his 2 brothers and 2 nephews had always been a grudge. Even she couldn't get rid of it. Couldn't get rid of it. The biggest worry in his heart. I will remember it. Third uncle, don't worry. June Moxie had originally wanted to leak some secrets to make June Wui feel at ease. At most, he would make up a big lie. He could say that his mysterious master had a friendship with Tian Fa's Beast King. But, he changed his mind after he heard the 2 layers of meaning. The desire to die in June Wui's heart was already deeply rooted in his heart. Even if he took his revenge in the future, he would still feel guilty towards his brothers and nephews. Even if he took his revenge and brought back Han Yanyao, June Wui was destined to never have any happiness in this life. He was destined to torture himself for the rest of his life. It was easy to get rid of the torture from others. But the torture from the bottom of his heart was impossible to get rid of. And, he was getting more and more desperate. Whether it was June Wui being crippled for the rest of his life, or being separated from his lover for the rest of his life, they might not even have the chance to meet again. There was also the huge pressure from his life and death feud. All of these pressured June Wui to the point of suffocation. But, it was only external pressure. It was far from being comparable to the guilt in his heart. Chapter 348. Perhaps it was predestined that even the heavens would take pity on a pitiful person like June Wui. The southern heaven city was fraught with dangers and murderous intentions. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was a narrow escape from death. In fact, June Wui felt that he was doomed to die a long time ago. But, all of this had been predestined to be a daunting experience without mishap under the mediation of June Moxie. June Wui didn't even need to pay attention to the hidden arrows in the dark. He could guarantee his safe return. However, the third Master June was completely unaware of all this. He had participated in this decisive battle with the mentality of certain death. So, this experience of life and death would inevitably have a major change in his mentality if he were to escape from death after the battle. Perhaps, this would be a turning point in his life. Perhaps, this would be a turning point in his life. A person who had been reborn after death would naturally not have such a strong desire to die. In fact, he would feel as if he had repaid something in his heart. And, he would feel reluctant to part with his life in the future. This was a subtle psychological phenomenon. June Moxie felt that his third uncle, June Wui, needed the feeling of death. So, he didn't say anything. In fact, he planned to provoke the third uncle with a few more words. About the grudge, does the third uncle have anything else to say? June Moxie asked. Since he had decided to send the third uncle to the cliff, he might as well add more fuel to the fire. He would let him vent his anger today. The more he vented, the more relaxed he would be after tomorrow. So, what if the cliff was high and dangerous? The most perfect safety measures had already been taken. The grudge, this is exactly what I wanted to say. June Wui looked at him deeply and solemnly said, revenge must be taken. But, Emos, you must promise me one thing. The third uncle won't be able to rest in peace if I don't get this promise from your own mouth. What is it? Third uncle, please speak clearly. June Moxie asked. I know that your current strength has already far exceeded the scope of my imagination, but I still want you to promise me that before your strength has reached the level of a supreme being, before you have absolute confidence, don't even think about taking revenge. That would only doom the June family to eternal damnation. The burden of the June family rests on your shoulders. Don't disappoint me. June Wuyi's eyebrows were knitted in deep pain and deep hatred. I also believe that you're resourceful, talented, and strong. The day of your revenge won't be far off. So, you must remember this when you're strong enough, Mo-sia. Your third uncle, I want the Shao family to be completely annihilated and consigned to eternal damnation. Jun Wui clenched his teeth. His usually indifferent and affectionate face showed traces of malevolence for the first time. Jun Wui had always followed the principle of the crime of one's wife and children shouldn't be punished. This was also his way of doing things. But today, he had actually said something like, completely annihilated and consigned to eternal damnation. It was clear that his hatred for the Silver Blizzard City Shao family had already reached an extreme level. I will, third uncle. The Shao family is already doomed to a tragedy. Just as you said, this day will not be too far away. Jun Moxie clenched his teeth and fiercely said. In the end, he added, third uncle, you can go in peace. Guan Qinghan heard this, and immediately became unhappy. Her long and shapely eyebrows were raised on her tear-stained face. Jun Moxie. How can you say that, you bastard? What do you mean by rest in peace? Is that what you're saying? Even Dugu Xiaoyi was unhappy. She pouted her small mouth as she looked at Jun Moxie. Her expression was very unfriendly. Jun Moxie raised his hands in surrender. He couldn't afford to provoke a woman who was deeply moved. Didn't I just create a tense atmosphere? It's not like I didn't prepare for a good thing. Who could be more concerned about the safety of the third uncle than I am? Jun Wui chuckled and said, Qinghan, you're no longer the daughter-in-law of my Jun family. But, are you willing to be the daughter of my Jun family? Third uncle? Guan Qinghan raised her head in astonishment. Her heart was filled with grief. She had broken off her engagement with the Jun family. Her family would certainly sacrifice her in order to please the Shui Han manor if she were to return to the Guan family. She didn't know what to do in her heart. In fact, she would rather grow old alone in the Jun family than marry a scoundrel like Li Tingyun if she had the choice to make. She had heard Li Tingyun's malicious words from behind the curtain. So, her heart had been filled with disgust. It was an insult to look at such a scum. What's more, marrying him and accompanying him for a lifetime. Guan Qinghan understood as soon as she heard Jun Wui's words. Jun Wui didn't mean to stand idly by. Instead, he wanted to use a different method to protect her. She couldn't help but feel extremely moved in her heart. Qinghan, Jun Wui, will adopt you as my daughter if you're willing. I, Jun Wui, have no way forward. But, Qinghan, you'll be a legitimate member of the Jun family from now on. No one will be allowed to bully you. My Jun family will use blood to wash away any grievances you've suffered. Even the Guan family won't be able to do so. Jun Wui snorted coldly and resolutely said. Guan Qinghan's lips opened and closed. Her tender body trembled violently. But, she didn't hesitate. She slowly knelt down and heavily kowtowed. Daughter Qinghan pays respect to Godfather. Good. 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 Jun Wui was very happy. He shouted, good, 3 times. Then, he took out a jade pendant and handed it over. Qinghan, this is Godfather's gift to you. It's also the symbol of our Jun family. Take this jade pendant. You must remember that you're not only the Guan family's daughter. You're also the Jun family's daughter. So, the Guan family will have to discuss your marriage with the Jun family from now on. Guan Qinghan took the jade pendant. She saw that the surface of the jade was smooth. The name, Qinghan, my grandson, was engraved on it. It was written in Grandpa Jun's handwriting. It was obvious that this had been prepared a long time ago. And it wasn't something that could be taken out in a hurry. She couldn't help but be startled. She raised her head and looked at Jun Wui with a puzzled expression. This jade pendant was prepared by your grandfather a few years ago. Your grandfather had said that even if Qing Han doesn't become the Jun family's daughter-in-law, she's still the Jun family's daughter. Today, I've fulfilled this old man's wish. Jun Wui chuckled. Qing Han, we've seen your suffering. We won't let you waste your life like this. As long as there's a living person in the Jun family, we won't allow anyone to bully you. At this point, Jun Wui sighed deeply and said, I'm going to go today. I don't know if I'll be able to live the day after tomorrow. So, there's nothing to say. Ever since you came to the Jun family, Mo Xia, has been somewhat moved. In the past, he had always been restricted by the relationship between uncle and sister-in-law. But, now that the world has been made aware of this, he doesn't have to worry about this anymore. If you... He smiled bitterly, but didn't continue. However, the meaning behind his words was clear to the three people present. The effect of this sentence was incomparable to the shock it brought to the three people present. So much so that the three people didn't notice that Jun Wui had secretly glanced at Dugu Xiaoyi after he had finished speaking. Mo Xia, I've already given you some pointers on your path. But, whether or not you'll be able to bring home the beauty in the end. Or perhaps, you'll be able to kill two birds with one stone. But, it'll all depend on your own methods. I most likely won't be able to see it. I, third uncle, have lost face by saying these words today. Sigh. I wouldn't have said these words if it weren't for the fact that there's no hope of survival tomorrow. Why would I say these words if it weren't for the fact that there's no hope of survival tomorrow? As an uncle, matchmaking for my nephew, the woman is another nephew's woman, plus the adopted daughter that I've just recognized. It doesn't sound good no matter whether it's successful or not. This can be considered as the dead being respected. Jun Moxie looked at Jun Wui dumbfoundedly. My third uncle, Sai, you really know how to get benefits for your nephew. We're going to fight tomorrow, but you still have the mood to think about this tonight. I can't help but admire you. You're really convinced and admiring. This is too valiant. Guan Qinghan's whole body trembled when she heard this. Her pretty face seemed to be covered with rouge in an instant. Her blush went all the way to her neck. Her crystal white little earlobes also seemed to turn red and transparent. She shyly glanced at Jun Moxie, whose mouth was as big as a hippopotamus, and deeply lowered her head. As for Dugu Xiaoyi, it was as if she had been struck by lightning. Her eyes were wide open, and her adorable face suddenly became deathly pale, without the slightest trace of blood. What? You call this a witness? Oh my God, I've been a witness for so long, but why do I feel that I've lost my lifelong happiness? What's going on? The little girl's heart suddenly swayed between gains and losses. She suddenly became nervous and anxious, and the way she looked at Guan Qinghan also changed. Why does this elder sister Guan, who has always been very amiable and congenial, look so ferocious and terrible at this moment? You actually want to steal my husband? No, everything can be discussed, but this is the only thing that can't be discussed. The little girl angrily rolled her eyes, and kept thinking of countermeasures in her heart. Originally, Dugu Xiaoyi was still a little happy in her heart, because only she knew how good Jun Moxie was among the little sisters. The others regarded Jun Moxie as a big pervert, a big hooligan, a big bully, a big debauchee, and a complete lecher. Dugu Xiaoyi had been very complacent in her heart. She had a kind of happy feeling of making a fortune in silence. Of course, she couldn't say this kind of thought out loud. What if everyone knew and came to snatch him? Elder brother Jun is mine alone. Therefore, during this period of time, Dugu Xiaoyi had been extremely tender and sweet to Jun Moxie. She wanted to quickly occupy him for herself. Gold will always shine. If others find out, I won't be able to monopolize this big advantage. Only when the delicious food is in my mouth and chewed up, will I have the confidence that it will become mine. This sentence was said by my grandfather. Humph, last time, Princess Raimu suddenly made a blood oath. Although the motive was a little special, it still startled Dugu Xiaoyi. Fortunately, June Moxie didn't seem to have any feelings for Princess Raimu. Fortunately, it was because of that matter that Dugu Xiaoyi made up her mind to follow June Moxie all the way to Tiannan. As the saying goes, the one who strikes first gains the advantage. If Princess Raimu took it seriously, no matter what she thought, she would find His Majesty to decree the marriage. Then, it would really be too late. Along the way, the little lass had deliberately flattered Guan Qinghan. She thought that with Guan Qinghan's help, she would have a higher chance of winning. However, she didn't expect that there would be a bolt from the blue today. According to the third uncle, he actually wanted to make June Moxie and Guan Qinghan a couple. The old hen directly became a duck, and the helper directly became a competitor. This was a typical case of going for wool and coming home shorn. She was too clever for her own good. How could this be? No. The more Dugu Xiaoyi thought about it, the angrier she became. She stuck out her small chest and roared with righteous indignation. Her voice was clear, crisp, fierce, and even a little fierce. It shook the tent and made it buzz. The other three were all startled by her and looked at her in astonishment. Dugu Xiaoyi didn't care about being shy. She rushed forward and hugged June Moxie's arm. She shouted as if she was declaring her sovereignty, "He's mine. He's mine alone. You can't fight with me. Boo-hoo." As she spoke, she suddenly felt extremely wronged and burst into tears. Sobbing, she said, "I've been eyeing him for a long time. How can you fight with me for him? He's mine, mine alone. I won't let anyone fight with me. Boo-hoo." Chapter 349. Dugu Xiaoyi's tone was like that of a little girl who had her sweets stolen, or like a child who had been staring at the fruits on the tree for half a year, waiting for the fruits to ripen. But when the fruits were about to ripen, two people came out of nowhere, looked at the fruits on the tree, and talked about how to divide them, but ignored her. She actually ignored me. She was driven mad, and felt wronged to the point of being indescribable. Jun Wui and the other two opened their eyes wide at the same time, and then burst out laughing almost at the same time. This girl's actions and expressions are too adorable. Jun Wui's heavy heart and Guan Qinghan's embarrassment and shyness were driven away without a trace by this one action of hers. Dugu Xiaoyi realized what she had done when she saw the three of them staring at her. She couldn't help but pout, and angrily said, "It's mine." She realized that she had lost her composure after she had finished speaking. She didn't have a clear engagement with June Moxie, so she didn't have any position to make irresponsible remarks. Moreover, the third Master Jun's request was tantamount to his dying wish. So, she shouldn't have caused such a disturbance. Not to mention, she was still acting as a notary at the moment, so she shouldn't have caused such a disturbance. Besides, how could these words be said by an unmarried young lady like her? Not to mention that she was the only daughter of the Dugu family. The little girl couldn't help but blush, and quickly let go of June Moxie's hand. She bit her lips and stood there for a while in embarrassment, not knowing what to say to remedy the situation. The little girl didn't know what to say. Jun Wui, Guan Qinghan, and Jun Dashao also didn't know how to smooth things over. The three of them had been shocked by Dugu Xiaoyi's bold action, and hadn't recovered yet. The four of them stared at each other in a stalemate for a moment. Suddenly, the little lass let out a squeal, covered her burning hot face, turned around, and rushed out as if there was a dog chasing after her. They only heard a loud bang and didn't know what she had hit. Emosia. Ha, your charm is not small. You haven't done anything yet, but you've already caused the Dugu family's precious daughter to fight for your affections. Jun Wui laughed heartily. Guan Qinghan's case hadn't been finalized yet. But, how could he not understand that Dugu Xiaoyi was deeply in love with his nephew after witnessing this scene? So, she was completely at ease about his nephew's marriage. Moreover, the little girl's family background was of equal status. Moreover, the emperor would have to weigh the pros and cons if the Jun family and the Dugu family were to unite by marriage. So, even if the emperor wanted to target the Jun family, he would still have to weigh the pros and cons. And, his nephew's good deed would come to an end. So, he would be able to smile in the underworld even if he were to die tomorrow. His only regret was that he wouldn't be able to drink his nephew's wedding wine. Jun Dashao was also in an extremely awkward situation. He opened his mouth several times, but couldn't say a single word. He didn't know when he had become this little girl's personal property. So, he spread out his hands, and shrugged his shoulders. His face seemed to be laughing and crying at the same time. He struggled to speak after a long while. It's not my fault that I'm too handsome. Is this a crime? Guan Qinghan's face turned cold as she snorted. But, she didn't say anything. Then, her face turned red again after a long while. And, it became as bright as the rosy clouds of the morning. Jun Wui smiled in a pleased manner. But, he felt that what he had said a moment ago wasn't befitting of his status as an elder. Moreover, this matter had involved his recently adopted daughter. So, he smiled bitterly in embarrassment. Then, he waved his hand and said, "You can withdraw. I want some time to think about tomorrow's battle." Jun Moxie and Guan Qinghan looked at each other. Then, they withdrew at the same time. Jun Moxie wanted to say a few words to Guan Qinghan. But, the moment he got out of the tent, Guan Qinghan disappeared with a swoosh. Her expression was one of panic, fear, and shyness. Jun Dashao heaved a long sigh. He faced the clear sky and the bright moon. Then, he put on a self-admiring and infuriating posture. Then, he murmured coquettishly, "I'm a man who can cause the downfall of a nation. My body is as pure as ice and as pure as jade. Beautiful women blush when they see me. Beautiful women elope when they see me." Then, he swayed as he walked back to his tent in a self-indulgent manner. Inside the tent, Jun Wui flicked his sleeves. All the lights in the tent were extinguished. It was pitch black in an instant. After a while, the gentle moonlight shone into the tent. The candles that had just been extinguished were still emitting faint green smoke. The smoke rose and dissipated. Jun Wui's green-robed figure was hidden in the darkness. He didn't move anymore. Outside the tent, the three Dongfang brothers stood motionless with their hands on their swords. They didn't make a single sound. In fact, they were quietly accompanying their old brother. Tonight might be the last night of Jun Wui's third brother's life in this world. Brothers of flesh and blood were separated by the netherworld. But, a hero shouldn't be lonely even if he's at the end of his road. "We'll accompany you." Guan Qinghan stood not too far from Jun Wui's tent. Tears silently flowed down her pretty face. But, she didn't move. She didn't dare to make a single sound. "Third uncle, godfather, you won't be lonely tonight. Let your daughter accompany godfather for the first night. Perhaps, it'll be his last night." The surroundings were quiet. Countless burly men from the Tianxiang military camp were fully armed. They looked like tall and straight wooden stakes as they stood outside the tents in a neat formation. The fervent eyes of the men were filled with sincere emotions. They did not move at all, and even deliberately suppressed their breathing to the lowest possible level. "We'll be throwing away our lives if we go to war. But the marshal has chosen to sacrifice himself. Tomorrow, the marshal will go to war. Tonight, let us accompany you. Marshal, you shouldn't be lonely. A hero shouldn't be lonely." The blood general was the idol of the army. This illustrious name would eventually be engraved in the hearts of Tianxiang's soldiers, just like his elder brother, the white general Jun Wuhui. He would become a monument. He would become the legend of blood. The moonlight slowly rose into the sky. The clear blue sky shone brightly, and illuminated the mountains and rivers of the southern heaven city. However, He had no idea how many men's blood would be spilled on this vast land that had once been bathed in the gentle light of the war tomorrow. A faint silhouette rushed out of the tent. It seemed as if it had melted into the air, and disappeared into nothingness. Only the 3 Dongfang swords, whose cultivation had already reached the spirit Xian realm, felt as if something had moved above their heads. However, they looked at each other in astonishment, and didn't discover anything. Jun Wui had vaguely sensed something in the tent. But he didn't care. In fact, he didn't care. It wouldn't be a big deal even if a top-notch assassin were to assassinate him. After all, he was going to step on the road to the Yellow Springs tomorrow. So, what harm was there in dying a little earlier? Therefore, he really didn't care about anything. As for the others, they didn't even seem to be aware of this trace. Jun Moxie had finally dealt with the last candidate, Bailey Luoyun. So, he came back with a small bottle in his hand. I hope that this small bottle is useful. If it's useless, then I'll have to personally go to the battlefield and turn the tide. However, if those fellows who hoped for Third Uncle's death were to see Third Uncle return safe and sound, wouldn't that be a wonderful and pleasant surprise? The bright moon was setting in the west, and Dongfang was gradually getting brighter. Dawn always comes after darkness. In the tent, Jun Wui slowly stood up. He took 2 steps, and then hesitated for a moment. But he eventually decided to sit in his wheelchair. His legs had long since healed, and even his martial arts that had been neglected for 10 years had been restored. But if he were to reveal it now, it would be hard to say whether the emperor, who was bent on finding trouble with the aristocratic families, would accuse the Jun family of deceiving the emperor. If that were to happen, then even if he knew in the underworld, he would not be able to rest in peace. His legs wouldn't change even if he were to face the siege of countless high-level Shen beasts. I'm going to die anyway. So, why should I add a groundless accusation to my family? Jun Wui slowly turned his wheelchair. Then, he waved his right hand, and the sword on the wall flew into his hand. Then, he quietly opened the door. He had just stepped out of the tent when he was startled by what he saw. The third Master Jun had always been calm and collected. But, he had still been startled. What kind of terrifying scene was this? Dongfang's 3 swords were standing outside the door. They saw him come out. Dongfang Wenqing smiled faintly. Then, she quickly walked behind Jun Wui, and pushed his wheelchair. There was a sea of people on both sides of the tent. More than 20,000 soldiers were lined up neatly. They looked at him without saying a word. Everyone's eyes were somewhat red. Jun Wui's eyes were also somewhat red. He took a deep breath and said, "What are you all doing here? Everyone should disperse. It's not like we're going to be separated by life and death. Is there a need to be like this?" No one moved. How is it not a separation by life and death? Everyone knows what's going on. Jun Wui remained silent for a while. He looked at the familiar faces around him with a complicated look in his eyes. A long time passed. Then, his eyes gradually became firm. He gently raised his right hand, and shouted, "Today's combatants, step forward." 300 soldiers neatly stepped forward as soon as the order was issued. A few of them hesitated for a moment. But they still stood in line without any hesitation. They formed a phalanx behind Jun Wui. Dongfang Wenqing pushed his wheelchair and slowly walked out. 300 people followed behind him, and it looked like he was about to leave. Suddenly, a shout was heard. "Wait!" It was Jun Moxie. His face was solemn. He waved his hand and said, "How can we not have wine to send off the heroes of Tianxiang? Bring out the wine. Only the best wine is worthy of our Tianxiang's warriors. Mo Xia wishes that all of you will return triumphantly." Behind him, some people immediately rushed out with wine jars. Others carried large bowls and filled them to the brim. There was a faint apologetic look in Jun Moxie's eyes. Perhaps he had some conflicts with these people in the past. But they stood up resolutely today. Even though they knew that they were going to die, they still walked forward proudly. Not a single one of them retreated. Just this point alone was enough to earn Jun Moxi's respect. It didn't matter if they were good or bad in the past. To be able to face death without batting an eyelid was a hero. A real man. There's no such thing as good or bad among heroes. But, I'm sorry. I could have saved you. Saving you would have been as easy as lifting a finger. But, I can't. People can't die in a war. And, this is even more true in a war that's certain to be lost. For the sake of the third uncle and the Jun family, I can't save you. Chapter 350. Jun Moxi raised his bowl of wine, closed his eyes, and drained it in one gulp. He suddenly thought of a poem, and couldn't help but shout, "So what if your head is chopped off today? A life full of hardships and hundreds of battles. I'll go to Quan Tai to recruit the old troops, and with 100,000 flags, I'll behead the king of hell." Bang! The bowl of wine in his hand fell to the ground, and Jun Moxi stood upright on the back of a horse, and loudly said, "Everyone, there's no need to say any more superfluous words at this moment. From now on, the Jun family will take care of all 300 of your families. Whether it's birth, old age, sickness, death, weddings, funerals, as long as the Jun family exists in this world, and I, Jun Moxi, will not let them suffer even the slightest grievance. Thank you, third young master. We will repay the Jun family's kindness in our next life." The faces of the 300 men were filled with gratitude at the same time. The reason why they had accepted this decisive battle was because they were moved by Jun Wui's heroic spirit, and also because this was the military law. If they didn't want to fight, then their heads would fall on the ground, and their parents, brothers, wives, and children would be tarnished as cowards, and it would be difficult for them to raise their heads again. No matter how difficult it would be, they wouldn't be able to refuse. But people are always afraid of death. Since ancient times, any great hero, and great swordsman could die without any regrets, but they didn't really want to die. These soldiers were the same. But now that they heard Jun Moxi's solemn promise, they couldn't help but feel that a gentleman would die for his bosom friend. They knew that this was a decisive battle, but their families didn't say anything. Instead, it was the people they didn't like who gave them the most reassuring promise. "Men, what is the purpose of a man's life? What is the purpose of a hard life? What is the purpose of a blood-soaked battle? In the end, it's nothing more than parents, wives, and children, especially when they're on the verge of death. Glory, splendor, wealth, and money are all thrown to the back of their minds. The only thing that makes them feel uneasy is their families." And right now, Jun Imo Xia had already made the most solemn promise. Although they didn't know that Jun Moxi had made such a decision because of the guilt in his heart, they were relieved no matter what the reason was. Die in peace. 300 people knelt down on one knee at the same time, raised their wine bowls, and drained the wine in one gulp. Then, they looked deeply at Jun Moxi, stood up one by one, and walked out with their heads held high, without looking back. "This time I'm going to Quan Tai to recruit my old troops, with 100,000 banners, I'll behead the king of hell." Jun Wui laughed and said, "Good poem. There are indeed countless good brothers of mine there. Let's go." At this moment, the 20,000 armored cavalrymen on both sides dismounted at the same time and knelt on the ground, saying in unison, "Farewell, Marshal. May the Marshal return victorious and victorious." Jun Wui's body stiffened as he heard the words "return victorious and victorious." But, he didn't turn his head. Dongfang Wenqing and his two brothers stood straight like spears as they pushed Jun Wui forward steadily. A faint whimpering sound was heard from behind. The 20,000 soldiers were crawling on the ground, banners were fluttering on the top of the southern Heaven City's walls. 4,000 soldiers had already lined up in front of the city's gates. Jun Wui was seated in a wheelchair. His face was calm as he stood at the forefront of the formation. No matter if he lived or died, at this moment, he'd already disregarded life and death. Xiao Han and the others were also in the formation. They looked at Jun Wui with a complacent expression, as if their scheme had succeeded. They had already predicted that this thorn in their side wouldn't be able to escape today. They had finally used the most proper method. They didn't need to do anything, but they had forced him into a dead end. Not far away, Li Ju Tian, Solitary Eagle, Lei Wu Bei, Shi Changshao, and Feng Wanyun were standing at a high place. They were looking at the battle from afar. Li Tingyun and the other families were standing behind them, watching the battle from the sidelines. Everyone had a different expression on their faces. It was obvious that they were thinking about something. What are our chances of winning today's battle? Feng Wanyun was dressed in black robes, had black hair, and had a black sword. He stood like a javelin as he looked at Jun Wui in the distance. His heart was filled with regret. Such a good general and a good man is about to lose his life in front of me. But, I can't help him. I don't even have a chance of winning. Solitary Eagle's face was gloomy. There was a faint anger in his eyes. It was obvious that he was on the verge of exploding. The way he looked at Li Ju Tian had long since lost the respect and admiration in his eyes. It was obvious that he was extremely dissatisfied with today's matter. On this matter, Solitary Falcon and Feng Wanyun, the two of them who had been enemies for half their lives, actually had the same opinion. Shi Changxiao's face was also filled with an unhappy expression. Lei Wu Bei's face was expressionless. Li Ju Tian stood with his hands clasped behind his back. He looked calm on the surface, but his bones were brimming with arrogance. Li Ju Tian had always been tyrannical. Other people's opinions didn't matter. I don't care if I do things honorably or dishonorably. I'll beat whoever doesn't obey me. So what if you're a great master? I'll teach you a lesson if you dare to open your mouth. The bigger the fist, the bigger the reason. Feng Wanyun sighed. Feng Wanyun suddenly had an indescribable feeling of disgust towards the great master position that he had been pursuing all this time. Li Ju Tian's actions didn't resemble the bearing of the world's second most powerful great master. He was arrogant, overbearing. There wasn't a single redeeming quality about him apart from his extraordinary skills. In fact, there was nothing good about him. Feng Wanyun couldn't bear to see the Shuihun Manor and the Silver Blizzard City joining hands. How could they settle their personal grudges at such a critical time? It was important to know that this battle was related to the future of the Tianfa forest and the Xian experts of the continent. Where was their conscience? They had schemed to kill their own high-ranking military officers. Where was their morality? Moreover, the humans would be defeated if the Xian beasts were to fight. Li Ju Tian and the Silver Blizzard City would be able to retreat unscathed. However, the Xian beasts would take advantage of the situation to invade the mainland. And, the lives of millions of civilians would be in danger. Li Ju Tian, the great masters, and Shen Xian wouldn't be able to see it. The Silver Blizzard City was located at the peak of a snowy mountain, and was far away from the mortal world. But, could they stay away from the world forever? Although Feng Wanyun was a lone swordsman, he was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. He was warm-hearted and had a chivalrous heart. He couldn't stand these kinds of conspiracies. Moreover, he was using his strength to bully the weak. He was using the most despicable and shameless plot to deal with a respectable hero. So, what if he was a great master with such a temperament? If they failed, it would lead to a great calamity for thousands of li of the southern border. Could it be that they would be able to escape this eternal infamy? Would he be able to bear the burden of a great master? Don't tell me that we don't have a chance of winning this battle. Only 4,000 people are going to fight, or are they going to die? What exactly are we here for? Are we here to watch a show? Feng Wanyun sneered and said in a loud voice, "This Feng has come from afar to help the people of Tianfa. I'm doing my part for the common people of the world. I'm not here to be a lackey for the Shuihun Manor. Why aren't you letting me fight? Why are you letting a few Tian Xian Earth Xian experts go?" He was a proud and arrogant man. He had already endured today's matter. But he couldn't bear it any longer since the battle was imminent. So, he had to say it out loud even if the emperor was present. I'm afraid that you, Feng Huanyun, don't have the right to speak here. And, my Shui Han manor doesn't need a high-level henchman like you. Li Ju Tian clasped his hands behind his back. He didn't turn his head as he spoke in a faint voice, Brother Feng, you may leave if you find this unpleasing to the eye. Of course, if you think that I'm in the wrong, and want to teach me a thing or two, then I'll welcome you with open arms. I'm aware that I don't have the ability to teach Great Master Ju Tian. Feng Huanyun Lengling replied, it's not that I don't want to teach you a thing or two. What she was implying was, I would have beaten you to a pulp if I could. Feng Huanyun, I respect you as a senior. But, don't push your luck. Who do you think you are? What do you think this place is? You dare to be rude to my father? You've got guts. Li Tingyun shouted from behind. Feng Huanyun's complexion turned ice cold. Bang! Li Tingyun somersaulted, and his face swelled up. You're the one who's being impudent, you bastard. Do you think you can call out Feng Huanyun's name? Two figures flashed in quick succession. It was the solitary falcon. Among everyone present, only the solitary falcon's speed was faster than Feng Huanyun's. He saw Feng Huanyun's hand move downwards, and knew that something was wrong. So, he rushed to slap Li Tingyun. Feng Huanyun's hand was on the hilt of his sword the moment Li Tingyun slapped Li Tingyun. Who was Feng Huanyun? How could a youngster like Li Tingyun insult him? This youngster was the son of the second great master. But, he was nothing more than an ant in Feng Huanyun's eyes. Jun Moxie would have used an ancient poem to describe Feng Huanyun, 10 steps to kill a man, 1,000 miles unstoppable. No one in the world would have been able to save Li Tingyun if Feng Huanyun's hand had been on the hilt of his sword before Solitary Eagle had moved. Even Li Ju Tian wouldn't have been able to save him. Feng Huanyun was a top-notch expert on the same level as the 8 great masters. So, he didn't need a second sword to deal with Li Tingyun. The solitary falcon had taught Li Tingyun a lesson. He had saved Li Tingyun's life, but he had also saved Feng Huanyun. After all, Feng Huanyun would have been hunted down by Li Ju Tian if he had killed Li Tingyun. And Feng Huanyun would have been finished if that had happened. It wasn't worth risking the life of Feng Huanyun for the sake of a good-for-nothing bastard like Li Tingyun. Solitary Falcon had been fighting with Feng Huanyun for the past few decades, and they had developed a deep appreciation for each other. Although the two of them would fight whenever they met, but in their hearts, they had already become good friends. So, he naturally wanted to help Feng Huanyun resolve this crisis. Chapter 351. Feng Huanyun's ice-cold eyes glared at Solitary Eagle. Then, he turned to Li Tingyun who was lying on the ground. His voice was as cold as ice. Li Tingyun, you must understand that you can't provoke just anyone. I, Feng Huanyun, don't care if the person I want to kill is a relative of the emperor or the son of a great master. You're very lucky. I may not give face to your father, but I can't ignore the kindness of the 2 great masters. Fierce Gale Sword God, you're very awe-inspiring. Li Ju Tian finally turned around. Leng looked at Feng Huanyun with an undisguised murderous look in her eyes. Shi Changshao and Lei Wu Bei stepped forward to mediate. The enemy was right in front of them. Why couldn't there be internal strife at this critical juncture? Feng Huanyun didn't show any weakness as he held his sword. A long while passed before a cold smile appeared on his face. He slowly shook his head and said, "It seems that I shouldn't have come today." Then, he suddenly turned around and said, "Everyone, this Feng will take his leave." His figure flew high into the sky as he said this. He then shouted in a stern voice, "Jun Wui, I will drink with you if you don't die today. I, Feng Huanyun, have seen you in danger today, but I am powerless to do anything. I will repay the Jun family in the future. Farewell." His voice hadn't even faded when his body made a turn in the air. Then, a brilliant ray of sword light shot out. Feng Huanyun's body followed that ray of light, and disappeared into the distance like a meteor. His sneer remained in the sky. The Silver Blizzard City and the Shui Han Manor are very famous, but they're nothing more than mediocre. Ha ha ha. His voice echoed in the valley. Mediocre, mediocre, mediocre. Jun Wuyi, who was at the front of the battle formation, was startled. He looked at the brilliant sword light in the sky, and a trace of warmth appeared on his cold face. "Thank you very much," Jun Wuyi softly said. It seemed as if he was speaking to himself. A warm feeling welled up in his heart. There's still justice in this world. There's still a lovely world. Li Ju Tian's face turned ashen in an instant. He looked at his son's swollen face and saw blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. He abruptly raised his head and looked at Solitary Eagle and Shi Changshao. He saw that both of them had displeased looks on their faces, so he angrily asked, "May I ask the two supreme martial artists, do you also think that this old man's behavior is very inappropriate? Do you think that the things you've planned are all very reasonable, righteous and awe-inspiring?" Solitary Eagle rolled his eyes, and became angry. "Li Ju Tian, you're the second great master. But, you're distorting the truth. So what if I distort the truth? Who in the world dares to say that I'm wrong?" A sharp light flashed in Li Ju Tian's eyes as he looked at Solitary Eagle. "Solitary Eagle, don't you forget that this old man only has one son. Even if I have to become the enemy of the world, I will definitely fulfill my son's request." "Ha ha. Great Master Li Ju Tian, why didn't you show your heroic spirit when you faced the Venerable Mei yesterday? I've heard that your precious son is the root cause of this disturbance. Do you dare to deny it? So what if you only have one son? This old man will slap him until he rolls on the ground. What's wrong? Is your heart aching? By the way, this old man's slap has saved your Li family's life. So, why don't you hurry up and thank this old man since you care so much about it?" Solitary Eagle's temper flared up. He didn't care about anything else. He raised his neck, and slanted his eyes as he taunted the second great master. He knew that he wasn't Li Ju Tian's match, but he didn't cower. He pointed at Jun Wuyi, and turned his head to speak. "Li Ju Tian, your son is your son. But, what about other people's sons? Are they born from stones? Li Ju Tian, those 4,000 people who have come to their deaths are also raised by their fathers and mothers. They will turn into bones when they die. And, your son will stink when he dies. Do you think your son is pampered?" The cold-blooded Great Master Lei Wu Bei's face was cold as he stood up and said, "What's the point of arguing about these trivial matters at this point? You're making a fool of yourself. Those who deserve to die will die. And, those who don't deserve to die will live after today. Do you think that you can let those who don't deserve to die live by having an internal strife? This old man has 11 disciples. And, 8 of them have died inexplicably. And, we still don't know who the murderer is. Shouldn't I fight with you if I do as you say?" Shi Changshao also suppressed his anger, and stepped forward to smooth things over. Li Ju Tian didn't care. But, Shi Changshao was a great master of his country. He had come to this place on his own initiative for the well-being of his people. Shi Changshao had never considered himself a good person. But, he had a strong sense of the overall situation. He had helped the Shui Han Manor a lot ever since he had arrived. And, Li Ju Tian's words were very hurtful. However, this wasn't the right time for an internal strife. Solitary Eagle was also vexed. "Damn it! I've done this for Feng Huanyun. But, I've still saved your son's life. And, you're not even thanking me for setting up a memorial tablet for me. But, you're venting your anger on me instead. What kind of logic is this? Do you think that I deserve to be bullied because I'm ranked last? Believe it or not, I'll kill your son. I admit that you're stronger than me. But, you're like a snail. Can you even catch me if you want to kill me? The weaker spirit Xian experts, like Xiao Buyu and the others, also stepped forward to mediate. Eventually, the four great masters snorted, and turned their heads away one after another. Solitary Eagle was extremely anxious in his heart. He had learned from Jun Moxie that Li Tingyun was the root cause of this matter. But, he couldn't understand why Jun Moxie hadn't allowed him to stop Jun Wui from fighting. Moreover, he didn't know where Jun Moxie had gotten his confidence from. His heart was in a mess. He would look around from time to time in search of Jun Moxie's traces. Solitary Eagle hadn't participated in this matter. But, he had received Jun Moxie's warning in advance. However, Jun Dashao had already flown away. So, nobody knew where he had gone. Suddenly, a black cloud rose from the direction of the Tian Fa forest in the distance. And, it was moving forward at a rapid speed. These were countless flying Xian beasts. Dust and smoke rose from the ground. Then, a thunderous sound rolled over. It could be heard from the sound that it was impossible to tell how many Xian beasts were running at the same time in order to create such a huge and earth-shattering sound. There was a subtle fluctuation in the air. Then, a power that was comparable to the speed of sound came out to meet the sound. It was Jun Moxie who was using his meteor-like escape technique. A somewhat hoarse voice pierced through the air from afar. Li Ju Tian, are you ready on your side? A small black dot in the sky rapidly grew bigger as this voice echoed. A mysterious person shrouded in a black robe flew over like a meteor from afar. Then, he suddenly came to a screeching halt when he was about 100 feet away from everyone. He then stopped in midair. This precise control of his movements was enough to make everyone slap the table and exclaim in admiration. But, this person had suddenly stopped in midair? The amount of Xian Qi needed to accomplish this was even more shocking. Venerable Mei. Li Ju Tian cupped his hands, and saluted along with the other three great masters. I trust you've been well since we last met. Respect for the true pinnacle powerhouses was an inevitable principle in any world. However, Li Ju Tian hadn't expected that his words would provoke such an unexpected reaction. In fact, it was as if a volcano had been set off. The phrase, I trust you've been well since we last met, wasn't an exaggeration. But, the problem was that Li Ju Tian's question wasn't an issue. But, the Venerable Mei himself had said, I trust you've been well since we last met. Venerable Mei's cultivation was very high. But, his body trembled when he heard the phrase, I trust you've been well since we last met. In fact, he nearly fell from the sky. He managed to stabilize his body in time. But, he still fell by more than 10 feet. Then, he gritted his teeth and said, Li Ju Tian, don't you have anything else to say? We just talked 3 days ago. What do you mean by, I trust you've been well since we last met? I think you don't have a brain. Or, there's mold in your brain. Or, is your brain stuffed with tofu dregs? Has your brain gone stupid from practicing martial arts? You're a bastard. You old bastard. Why don't you go and die? This peerless expert had casually greeted him, and had started to curse like a shrew in the street. It was truly incomprehensible to the extreme. Li Ju Tian was furious and depressed. Damn it. I've asked you if you've been well since we last met. Is that a crime? Damn it. You're simply unreasonable. You're reacting as if you've been stabbed in the ass. Is this necessary? I'm the second great master. But, you don't even know how to leave me some face. You've shredded all pretense of cordiality. What's the difference between this and a shrew's behavior? Venerable? Bullshit venerable. How could someone of Li Ju Tian's status be willing to be humiliated? His complexion couldn't help but turn cold. Venerable Mei seems to be very angry today. Don't tell me that you've been disrespectful. You bastard, Li Ju Tian. Are you talking to this venerable one? Don't you have any respect for your superiors? Venerable Mei became like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. He jumped up, and his voice became exceptionally sharp. Jun Mo Xia wasn't a person without self-restraint. However, Li Ju Tian was out of luck that day. That was because Venerable Mei had taken every word that he had asked to Li Ju Tian's ears. Therefore, Venerable Mei had taken his words to mean something else. This was the greatest shame and humiliation that the Venerable Mei had ever experienced in his life. There was a poem that said, "Even the waters of 3 rivers and 5 lakes can't wash away the shame of that day." Venerable Mei's heart nearly burst with anger as he recalled the embarrassing events of that day. His blood nearly flowed into his brain. His hair stood up in anger, and he looked up to the sky and roared. Such an outrageous, despicable, shameless, vile, and despicable thing has been done to me. I haven't even dared to make a sound. And, I've been. Ha! Does Li Ju Tian know something? If it wasn't just 3 days ago, why did he feel that his attitude was somewhat different? He's obviously teasing me. This is obviously Venerable Mei's own psychological problem. What does Li Ju Tian know about what has happened to him? He's simply confused. However, Venerable Mei looked at Li Ju Tian with an unfriendly expression as he thought about this. His murderous aura grew more and more ferocious as he gnashed his teeth. Do you think I'm someone who can be teased? This is Li Ju Tian's bad luck. Li Ju Tian's current injustice was comparable to that of Marshal Yu's Storm Pavilion. In fact, it was even more excessive. Moreover, he hadn't been accused of any groundless crime. Instead, he had been slapped with a huge crime. Li Ju Tian would have died at the hands of Venerable Mei. And, it would have snowed in June. Even the heavens would have shed tears of sympathy. This is too unfair. Chapter 352. The Lord of Tian Fa was raging outside. Bear Mountain's face was ferocious. He was eager to go out and fight. He was leading his Xian beasts, and was howling as he walked out. Suddenly, a voice echoed in his ear, "Old Bear, will you fight the first battle today?" Big Bear was stunned. This feeling was as if someone was walking beside him, and the two of them were talking as they walked, right beside his ear. However, he couldn't see a single person. In fact, he felt the same as Bear Mountain. June Moxie was by his side, and was accompanying him. But, he couldn't see him, that's all. However, Bear Mountain's mouth drew back, and he almost laughed out loud. That's because he had recognized who had spoken. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart, an expert is indeed an expert. Just look at his remarkable methods. How many people in this world can use them? He respectfully replied, yes. I, the Tiger King, and the Lion King will lead the lion, tiger, and bear Xian beasts to battle the Tian Fa Xian experts. Well, I've sprinkled the medicinal powder you gave me on the heads of 5 people, June Moxie chuckled and said, pay attention later. Don't mistake them for someone else. Of course. Bear Mountain felt that this senior was a bit long-winded today. Isn't that obvious? How can we mistake them for someone else? However, he didn't know that June Moxie was a bit nervous that day. So, he was naturally a bit long-winded. Big Bear felt a cool sensation on his shoulder at this moment. Then, a stream of pure spirit energy entered his body, and started to circulate throughout his body. His entire body felt refreshed as a result. The meridians that had been injured by Li Ju Tian's elusive heart sword art had been healed. He couldn't help but be overjoyed. He then said gratefully, thank you, senior. His injuries were not light, but after being treated by the #1 mystical beast king, he was almost completely healed. Now that June Moxie's spiritual energy had arrived, it was just the right medicine for the illness, and he was completely healed. Moreover, Bear Mountain had just taken a panacea that could increase his cultivation by 10 years, so his cultivation had improved a lot. At this moment, he felt his shoulder lighten, as if he had lost something. A voice said, however, the situation of those 5 people in today's battle is not good. Not only from your side, but even from within the alliance, there are many people who are planning to launch sneak attacks. I will entrust this to you. We must not let them suffer even the slightest injury. Don't worry, Senior. I, Old Bear, also can't stand this kind of thing. Leave everything to me. Bear Mountain vigorously patted his chest and took charge of everything. That's good. I'm relieved. Yes, there's no need to show mercy to others. Especially those from the Silver Blizzard City and the Shuehan Manor. Get rid of them if you can. June Moxie chuckled twice and said, I'm leaving. Bear Mountain looked around in a daze, but there was nothing around him. He would have thought that he was dreaming if his internal injuries hadn't been healed. June Moxie used his horizontal escape technique to find Long Crane, and exhorted him again. Then, he returned with a satisfied look on his face. It should be, everything is settled. June Moxie had gained a lot over the past 2 days. But, he had also been extremely sullen. Li Ju Tian had shielded his son, and had brazenly framed Jun Wui. The Silver Blizzard City had added fuel to the fire, and the major clans had become submissive. This had made June Moxie extremely angry. My third uncle would have been unable to escape death if I hadn't had a backup plan. Moreover, I've come to assist the Shuehan Manor. This matter can't be called despicable. In fact, it should be called obscene. Extremely obscene. But, don't blame me for being unjust since you're so heartless. I have a powerful assistant like Tian Fa Forest. If I don't make a good plan, then you'll end up losing the rice used to lure the chicken. Wouldn't that make the June family look easy to bully? Li Ju Tian and Li Tingyun, I'll also prepare a big gift for you and your son. I'll guarantee that you'll wish you were dead. Shi Changshao saw that Venerable Mei and Li Ju Tian were furious. So, he hastily stepped forward and smiled. Venerable Mei seems to be in a bad mood today. Why don't you take a break for now? We'll talk again later. This Master of Life and Death could also tell that Venerable Mei had just experienced some unforeseen event. Her head was filled with anger, and her words and actions today were really too much. Even if Li Ju Tian doesn't have the status of the second great master, you still can't scold him as if he's your son. A man needs face, and a tree needs its bark. You can't bully people like that even if you're the strongest person in the world. Great Master Li's face had turned pale with anger. In fact, he was almost unable to breathe. However, this matter was too dramatic. Li Ju Tian had relied on his superior Xian Qi to teach Solitary Falcon, Feng Wanyun, and the others a lesson in a domineering manner. Now, someone was still acting domineering, but the one being taught a lesson was Li Ju Tian himself. The Solitary Falcon listened with a smile on his face, and felt very happy. Damn it! It said that the river flows east for 30 years, and then west for 30 years. But, it doesn't seem to be accurate. Look at what happened today. How could it take 30 years? 3 blinks of an eye was enough. How delightful, not in a good mood. Humph. Venerable Mei snorted as he listened to Shi Changxiao's words. Then, he suddenly pointed his finger at Li Ju Tian and spoke in a stern voice, "Who said that I'm not in a good mood? This old bastard is courting death. This 3-legged plaything dares to call himself the second great master? He's shameless to the extreme. He's pitiful and ridiculous. He has the expression of a bastard who deserves a beating, and his entire body is like a tortoise. Who the hell is this? He dares to strut around in front of me. Call your master's wife over and ask them if they dare." Li Ju Tian was furious. He looked up to the sky and roared. His murderous aura soared, and his robes fluttered even though there was no wind. He was extremely humiliated, and had finally broken out. His face contorted with anger as he roared, "Venerable Mei, I respect you as the great master of Tian Fa. So, I wanted to settle this matter peacefully. But, you've humiliated me again and again. Do you think that I, Li Ju Tian, am afraid of you?" Even if he was made of clay, he would still have some anger, let alone the second most famous supreme being in the world. Li Ju Tian wouldn't have the face to continue living in this world if he didn't get back at him for being cursed at like this. Second Great Master? Eat my fart. Do you expect me to say that it smells good when someone rides on my neck and defecates? Venerable Mei snorted contemptuously and said, "This Great Master is clearly humiliating you. What can you do about it? What do you dare to do?" His figure flashed. No one could stop him in time. In fact, no one could stop him. Shi Changshao, Lei Wu Bei, Solitary Eagle, and the others were watching the show from the sidelines. So, how could they stop him? Li Ju Tian's body pounced forward like a storm. He unleashed his self-created 13 swords of Ju Tian in a fit of rage. A cold sword suddenly appeared, and a strong wind blew. The surrounding crowd couldn't help but feel the sharp aura of the sword rushing towards them. Everyone's clothes fluttered in the wind, and their faces felt a faint pain. They couldn't help but take a few steps back. Li Ju Tian's feet had left a deep trench in the ground, and dust was flying everywhere. Venerable Mei softly shouted from midair, "Come at me." His wide black cloak swirled in the wind, and transformed into a mass of thick black fog. It seemed as if he was trying to swallow the entire world. He didn't try to evade, and instead went forward to meet Li Ju Tian's attack with a loud rumble. The battle between the two sides hadn't even begun yet. But the leaders of both sides had already started to fight. Moreover, the situation was very intense. Li Ju Tian's heart was filled with rage, grief, and humiliation. Venerable Mei's pain was indescribable. He was filled with monstrous shame, and he was in a predicament where he couldn't live under the same sky. In the span of 3 moves, both of them had unleashed their strongest abilities, and they had even used their most deadly moves. Moreover, it wasn't just once. The location of the decisive battle was a small basin between 2 mountains. The distance between the 2 mountains was at least 5 kilometers. However, when the 2 of them exchanged blows, they were like primordial demon gods riding on the clouds and mist, twisting and turning between the clouds and mist. Every movement was so fast that it was too much for one's eyes to follow. They fought from one side to the other like lightning, and then from the other side, one chasing the other back. The explosion in midair was like that of a mad god on a hot summer day. Thunderbolts continued to fall down. Finally, a loud explosion resounded in the middle of the sky. A black silhouette shot up several dozen meters into the sky like a rocket. Then, another silhouette fell down like a meteor towards the place where Solitary Eagle and the others were. The person who fell down was Li Ju Tian. He had been struck down from the sky by Venerable Mei's ferocious and earth-shattering offensive. No one had seen it. But, he was well aware that his shoulders, chest, and abdomen had received 3 palm strikes in that last collision. And, they had received 3 solid palm strikes. Great Master Li Ju Tian had intended to support himself with all his might. He wanted to maintain his figure, and at least not be in a difficult situation. But, he had fallen too fiercely. So, he had no room to control his fall. He crashed on the ground, and created a huge crater. He didn't fall, but he staggered backwards. It seemed as if a giant was trying to break open a mountain. He had created a deep trench in the rocky ground under his feet. Venerable Mei's deadly pursuit hadn't stopped yet. A long and sharp whistling sound was heard in midair as a black silhouette pierced through the sky. Its speed was so fast that even its black robe had been torn to shreds by the rapid descent. In fact, a faint green smoke was curling around the edges of the black robe. Just by relying on his own speed, he had almost set the black robe on fire. A white and smooth jade-like hand stretched out of the black robe for the first time. It was delicate and lovely, it seemed as if it had been carved out of white jade. However, this infinitely beautiful and delicate hand carried an infinitely frightening murderous intention. It fell mercilessly towards Li Ju Tian. Li Ju Tian screamed wildly. He gathered the remaining strength of his body, and launched a desperate counterattack. Shi Changshao, Lei Wu Bei, and Solitary Eagle had discovered Li Ju Tian's crisis at the same time. They loathed this man, but they knew that Li Ju Tian couldn't die in this situation. They would lose their greatest support if Li Ju Tian were to die. And, Venerable Mei had gone berserk today. So, it was likely that no one would be able to survive this. The three of them seemed to have a tacit understanding. They leapt forward at the same time and attacked with all their strength. Meanwhile, the 2nd, 5th, and 8th elders of the Silver Blizzard City had also caught up. The 7 great experts had joined forces to resist this tyrannical and deadly blow. Venerable Mei roared in the air. He then shouted coldly, "Come at me." He didn't even try to dodge. In fact, it was obvious that he had increased his strength by a few points. Bang 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 bang. A series of sounds of violent collisions were heard. Then, a slender black silhouette rose into the sky. It flashed and returned to the sky above the Tian Fa forest. Then, it slowly descended and landed on the top of a towering tree. It was as thick as a finger and stood facing the wind. Several muffled groans were heard at the same time. Xiao Buyu and the other 2 were the last to arrive. But, they were the first to fall. The 3 of them were like 3 rubber balls as they tumbled back up the mountain. The solitary falcon's body soared several meters into the air like an eagle spreading its wings. But then, he suddenly felt like he was about to fall down. He hastily steadied himself, and then floated back like a lightning bolt. In fact, he wasn't in such a difficult situation. Lei Wu Bei's face turned red. He spun as he retreated. He hadn't even stopped spinning when he jumped away from the core of the mountain. Shi Chengxiao's clothes had been torn to shreds. He looked like a butterfly fluttering in the sky. He didn't have enough time to do anything. So, he quickly retreated to a distance of 30 meters away. Then, he somersaulted and retreated another 30 meters. However, Li Ju Tian was the one who had suffered the most damage. Blood spilled from the corners of his mouth. He roared furiously and jumped into the air. Then, he disappeared in a flash. At this moment, an earth-shattering sound suddenly rang out from the center where the 8 people had clashed head-on. A huge mushroom cloud shot out with rocks flying in all directions, covering the entire sky in an instant. This situation was similar to a volcanic eruption. The smaller stones were the size of a fist, and the bigger ones were several meters in diameter. They soared into the sky as if they could destroy the world. The smaller stones disappeared without a trace. It was unknown where they had flown to. A long time passed. Then, the millstone-sized stones and the head-sized stones fell down like a meteor shower. The ground shook like a sieve as they smashed down. When the energies of the 8 experts suddenly collided with each other, under the restraint of each other, there was actually a slight delay in the air. It was as if a big explosion was brewing, and it was only at this moment that it truly erupted. But the power of this earth-shattering explosion was enough to shock any expert. They would feel a chill run down their spines, and their legs would tremble for a while. Li Ju Tian and the others had been standing on that small hill. However, more than half of it had been flattened by the explosion. Moreover, a huge pit of unknown depth had appeared on the ground. The reason why no one knew how deep it was because water had seeped out of the ground. The water was extremely turbid, and was making a gurgling sound. Everyone, including Bear Mountain Shan, had come out of the Tian Fa forest in a threatening manner. Everyone was so shocked that their mouths were wide open. They sucked in a mouthful of cold air. Is this something that can be done by a human? Oh my God! This is too scary. Bear Mountain Shan was the most unlucky one. He was too shaken by this explosion. His eyes were wide open, and his mouth was wide open. Even his beard was standing straight. Then, a stone the size of an egg flew into his mouth. It made 2 clanging sounds, and nearly knocked 2 of Bear Mountain Shan's teeth out. If it was an ordinary person, not to mention his teeth, even his tongue would have been smashed. But, what was Bear Mountain Shan? He was a bear. Moreover, he was a bear king. his teeth were very strong. So, he was lucky that they didn't fall out. But, his head was buzzing from the impact. His upper and lower lips subconsciously closed, and he chewed the stone to pieces with a crunched sound. Then, his tongue subconsciously curled up, and he swallowed the stone in an inexplicable manner. Cough cough, I'll say a few words about the explosion. First, I found a big flaw in the book. So, I've been thinking of ways to remedy it. Second, I'm going to Shanghai on the 29th. I don't have an airport here. So, I'll need to leave a day earlier. That is, I'll arrive at Jinan on the afternoon of the 28th. So, I'll be able to reach home on the afternoon of the 31st. So, I'll have nearly 4 days left. So, I'm working hard to save some manuscripts. Everyone knows that my typing speed is really rubbish. Therefore, I've been working overtime these past few days. I've calculated that I'll be able to save 2,000 characters a day. I want to cover my face when I talk about writing speed. I'm still using Sogu Pinyin. My eyes are glued to the keyboard. But, there are still a lot of typos. Chapter 353. The 7 great experts had joined hands, but they had only managed to achieve a near tie with Venerable Mei. Venerable Mei had used some tricks. But, one mustn't forget that the 4 great masters had joined hands. Moreover, they had the support of 3 of Shenxian's experts. Venerable Mei's Xian Qi had obviously reached a profound realm that would strike fear into the hearts of anyone who looked at it. This level of frightening strength was worthy of being at the peak of perfection in this world. The dust dispersed, and Li Ju Tian, Lei Wu Bei, Shi Changshao, and Solitary Eagle appeared on the top of the hill. Xiao Buyu and the other 2 were sitting cross-legged on the hilltop. Their complexions were deathly pale. The 3 of them were quite unlucky. They were only at the Spirit Xian realm. So, their martial power was relatively weak. So, they had already suffered internal injuries from the recoil. It wasn't too serious. However, it had already affected their strength. Moreover, they had been too slow in evading the explosion. So, they had been affected a little. This had made their situation even worse. Every bit of damage to their strength could lead to life-threatening danger at such a critical moment. So, how could the 3 of them not seize the time to recover? However, they weren't the most unlucky ones. The young Master Jun couldn't wait to come out after he had made his arrangements. He then hid himself in the sky, and watched the big show. He was in high spirits. The Lord of Tian Fa had cursed Li Ju Tian. The young Master Jun was so happy that he had danced with joy. In fact, he had wanted to applaud and cheer loudly. So, it was very satisfying to watch the confrontation between the 2 peak experts. However, extreme joy turned to sorrow at the most satisfying and exciting moment. Suddenly, an explosion occurred below him. He wasn't a Spirit Xian expert after all. So, he wasn't aware of what was going to happen in the next moment. Therefore, he was caught off guard. So, he was blown up by the strong momentum. Then, a huge rock flew up from the ground. It was almost 3 feet in diameter. Then, it landed right under his buttocks. Then, it carried him up into the sky. Jun Moxie's buttocks felt like they were hit by a huge discus, a red-hot discus. His buttocks were smashed and stuck to the surface. Jun Moxie was in so much pain that he almost screamed at the sky. Too fucking accurate. My August 15th is going to be a disaster. This brother is still in the state of yin-yang escape. Jun Moxie finally thought of escaping when he was high up in the sky. However, before he left, he naturally couldn't let go of this big rock that had tortured him. He gave it a hard kick and it immediately broke into pieces. Jun Moxie also took this opportunity to hide in the Hongjun Pagoda. It was truly thrilling. This was also the reason why everyone could only watch helplessly as a large stone slab with a circumference of 3 meters flew into the air, but did not fall. Because under young Master Jun's vengeance, he had already been torn into pieces, Venerable Mei stood at the top of a tree in the distance. He looked towards the sky in a suspicious manner, and had a pensive look on his face. Then, his attention was attracted by the four great masters. He clenched his teeth, and his black cloak fluttered in the wind. He was about to attack again. "Wait! Venerable Mei, wait!" A loud shout was heard from afar. The person who had shouted this shout had a profound Xian cultivation. His voice had shaken the mountains. Two whooshing sounds were heard as two black-robed men appeared in front of Li Ju Tian and the others. The most eye-catching thing was that these two men had purple-golden belts tied around their waists. And a purple-golden sword was hanging from each of these belts. These two men looked handsome, and had an outstanding bearing. Their black robes stuck to their bodies, and made them look particularly handsome. The two men stood still, and cupped their hands towards Venerable Mei. Then, they smiled and said, "We haven't seen each other for many years. Venerable Mei, I trust you've been well since we last met. Do you still recognize your old friends?" Venerable Mei's body hovered in the air as if he were weightless. His eyes swept over them as he spoke up, "So, it's you too. I'm surprised. How can I be unwell if you're well?" Li Ju Tian rolled his eyes in a gloomy manner. These two men had also said, "I trust you've been well since we last met." But the problem is that Venerable Mei didn't get angry when they said those words. "So, why did I have to suffer a world-destroying rage when I said the same thing?" One of the middle-aged men laughed and said, "Venerable Mei had already swept through the world in the past. I see that the Venerable Mei's Xian cultivation has improved by leaps and bounds. This is a cause for celebration." Cause for celebration? This Venerable must congratulate the two of you. The two great masters of the past have mysteriously disappeared for no reason. They haven't appeared in the world for decades. But, it turns out that you've gone to the hermitage to become the Purple Gold Guardians. Congratulations! Venerable Mei Lenglang spoke up. Then, he suddenly rolled his eyes and spoke up in a deep voice, "Lei Baoyu, Buquang Feng, the two earth-shattering swordsmen of the past, the great masters of the rainstorm and hurricane. Why have you graced Tian Fa with your presence?" Most of the people present were clueless as soon as these words were spoken. These two names were too distant for most of them. However, Li Ju Tian and the other great masters, the elders of the Silver Blizzard City, and a few of the older leaders of the families had a surprised and startled expression on their faces. Not many people remembered these two names now. But, they had scared many people 60 years ago. In fact, their souls would have flown away in fright if they'd heard these two names. Everyone who had stepped into the circle of Xian experts couldn't help but tremble when they heard these two names. There were two pairs of sworn brothers among the 8 great masters of the past. They were inseparable, and were the nightmare of the Xian experts of the Jianghu. Fortunately, these two pairs of sworn brothers didn't see eye to eye with each other. So, they kept each other in check. So, they would fight every few days. And, it would be an earth-shattering battle whenever they met. Moreover, these 4 men's temperaments were neither good nor evil. They didn't have any misgivings. They did whatever they wanted. And, they had stirred the world into chaos at that time. However, just when the 4 of them were at the height of their fame, they suddenly disappeared at the same time. Everyone had guessed that the 4 of them had perished together at that time. Countless people had clapped their hands in delight. And, the legend of these 4 men had gradually faded away. But, very few people knew what had happened back then after 60 years had passed. And, these 2 men were one of the sworn brothers. The 2 earth-shattering swordsmen of the past, the great masters of the rainstorm and hurricane. Lei Baoyu and Buquang Feng. As for the other pair of sworn brothers, they were 2 other eccentrics who shared the same fame back then. Cut through the wind and clouds, cut through the sky, Ren Ping Sheng, Ren Ping Sheng. Ren Ping Sheng, still mad. 2 great masters. Who would have thought that, after 60 years, They would hear the nightmarish names of rainstorm and hurricane again on the eve of the battle in Tian Fa Forest. And they even saw them in person. The only thing that puzzled people was that when they disappeared, they were not young anymore. They were at least 70 or 80 years old. Now, after 60 years, why did they look like two middle-aged men? Could it be that these two men had practiced the art of rejuvenation? You flatter me. The one who spoke had a black mole at the corner of his eye. The old people could clearly remember that this was the appearance of the great master of the rainstorm, Lei Baoyu. He smiled and said, "With our insignificant abilities, how would we dare to ask the Venerable Mei to teach us? Today, we have no choice but to represent the immortal palace as a witness for the battle between Tian Fa and the continent." Oh? Such a trivial matter actually alarmed the elusive world of immortals. Shouldn't I, Mei, feel particularly honored? Venerable Mei smiled mockingly. Facing these two great masters who were like killing gods, he did not care at all. Clearly, he had a card up his sleeve. How would we dare? But before we came, the palace lord specifically asked us to pass on a message to the Venerable Mei, Buquang Feng said casually. Please speak. I don't know what that hypocrite wants to tell me. Venerable Mei asked in a seemingly interested manner. Hearing him say, hypocrite, Buquang Feng's face twitched, but he forcibly suppressed his anger and said, the palace lord said, in the battle of Tian Fa, there is no harm in fighting, but Venerable Mei must be in control of propriety. Whether it's a battle between Xian cultivators or a battle between the three holy lands, the common people are innocent. I hope that the Venerable Mei will show mercy. Haha, you're still pretending to bemoan the state of the universe and pity the fate of mankind. Venerable Mei laughed and said, but our Tian Fa forest has always done whatever we want. We've never been controlled by anyone or any force. So, what can the hermitage do? Does he want to command our Tian Fa? That's a big joke. Whatever the Venerable Mei wants to do, we won't interfere. We can't interfere either. We won't help either side no matter what the outcome of this battle is. We will only report today's matter truthfully. Everything will be decided by the palace lord, Buquang Feng smiled. Venerable Mei snorted heavily and said, the two world-shaking swordsmen of yesteryear, the two great masters of the rainstorm and fierce wind, roamed the Jianghu. They were happy to repay kindness and enmity. They helped each other, and swept the world unhindered. How unrestrained and unruly. How incisive. I didn't expect that he would become like this after becoming the elusive world of immortals' purple gold law protector. I really admire your palace master's methods of teaching people. It would be strange if the two of you weren't battered and exhausted if you were to meet Ren Pingsheng and Yi Yen Kuang again. His words clearly implied that the rainstorm and fierce wind were very servile. They didn't spit out any vulgarities, but the insult was unbearable. Moreover, he had compared them to their old rivals. He had pointed out that the two men looked young, but hadn't made much progress in their cultivation. In fact, they weren't Ren Pingsheng and Yi Yen Kuang's opponents. Lei Baoyu and Buquang Feng's faces twitched. Their eyes flashed with intense anger. They pressed their right hands on the hilts of their swords, and took a step forward. Li Ju Tian's face lit up with happiness. Are these two going to attack? Our chances of victory will be much better if we get them involved. Lei Baoyu and Buquang Feng suddenly retracted their steps as he was thinking about this. Lei Baoyu faced Venerable Mei, and spoke up in an indifferent manner, Venerable Mei is an expert of the present age. So, there's no need to deliberately provoke us. It's inconvenient to fight today. But, that doesn't mean that there won't be an opportunity in the future. If Venerable Mei is interested in fighting today, then we two brothers will accompany you. Venerable Mei's black robe issued a whistling sound in the air. He seemed to be smiling as he replied, oh. Today is the Ghost Festival. So, I'll have to go home to spend the festival with my parents after this chapter. Chapter 354. Today is the second time. Bu Feng spoke in a gloomy manner. Venerable Mei is very interested in the palace lord's methods. So, why don't you go and give it a try? I believe that Venerable Mei will be very different. At least, he won't be the same as us brothers. Even Li Ju Tian didn't understand the meaning behind his words. However, he didn't know what he meant by those words. However, Venerable Mei had already become angry. His black robe fluttered in the wind, and it seemed that he was about to attack. However, he regained his composure after a while, and spoke up, "Hermitage, I will go. I will let your palace lord know the fate of a hypocrite." Lei Baoyu was about to speak, but Venerable Mei cut him off. "If you too wish to participate in the battle today, then come up. But, if you're only here to bear witness, then step aside. I'm not interested in bickering with you too. Step back." "Very well, since we've come to bear witness. Then, I ask Venerable Mei to lay down the rules." Lei Baoyu's face turned cold as he spoke. "It's simple. 3 battles will determine the winner. The first battle will be the battle of the legions. The second battle will be the battle of the leaders. And the third battle will be the decisive battle." Venerable Mei snorted and said, "The Xian beasts of Tianfa will retreat into the depths of the forest if you win. And, they will never appear again. But, there are 3 conditions if you lose. First, Li Ju Tian must hand over the Panther King's Xian core. Second, no Xian expert of the continent is allowed to enter Tianfa from now on. I will take the lives of 10,000 Xian beasts for every person who enters. And, 20,000 lives for 2 people who enter. This includes the entire family of the person who enters. Third, I want the legs of Li Ju Tian's son. His son is the cause of this battle. So, it must end with him. These conditions are too unfair." Bu Feng sneered and said, "You only need to retreat if you lose. But, you want 3 conditions if we lose? Venerable Mei, don't you think this is too much? Why would there be a dispute if you didn't enter Tianfa? How did the Panther King Xian Dan end up in Li Ju Tian's stomach? Bu Feng, are you trying to distort the truth?" Venerable Mei shouted angrily. Li Ju Tian took a step forward, and spoke up in a stern voice, "This matter was caused by your Tianfa forest. What does it have to do with me and my son? You've come to confuse right and wrong, and push all the blame onto our side. Venerable Mei, if you're talking about distorting the truth, I'm afraid you're the real one. Furthermore, what does the pinnacle battle have to do with my son? Why is my son's legs the third condition? Venerable Mei, don't you think you're going too far? What kind of ability does my son have to stir up such a storm? What you said is too ridiculous." Venerable Li was furious to the extreme. At the same time, he felt as if he had shot himself in the foot. He had pushed Jun Wui into the arena according to his son's request. So, he was only equipped with the weakest 4,000 people. It could be said that he was going to throw his life away. In other words, there was no doubt that they would lose this battle. There was no chance of winning at all. Anyone with eyes could see this point. But now, Venerable Mei had raised her conditions. The outcome of this battle was related to her son's legs. He was at a loss as to what to do. Wouldn't Li Tingyun have schemed against Jun Wui? But, wouldn't he also lose his legs? What would be the point of Jun Wui's death if that's the case? I'm an easygoing person. It's not a problem if Great Master Li Ju Tian doesn't agree. I'll lead my army to attack the continent. But, you can't blame me for the destruction of the mortal world. I've already proposed a peaceful solution. So, I can't do anything if you don't agree." Venerable Mei looked at Li Ju Tian in a calm and unruffled manner. It didn't matter to him whether the other party would agree or not. In any case, it was imperative that Tianfa establish its might. These 3 conditions won't change. Do you agree or not? I don't believe that you, Li Ju Tian, can offend the world even if you're the second great master. Moreover, I can beat him until he agrees even if he doesn't agree. I don't agree. I agree. Two different voices came from Li Ju Tian and Lei Baoyu. Protector Lei, this matter needs to be considered. Li Ju Tian was so angry that he almost vomited blood. But he knew that he couldn't afford to provoke hermitage. Li Ju Tian was the second most respected great master in the secular world. But he was well aware that his status as the second most respected great master was nothing in the eyes of the elusive land of the immortals. Lei Buyu and Buquang Feng weren't people that he could contend with. There's no need to consider. This is the palace lord's order. Lei Baoyu waved his hand and interrupted Li Ju Tian. Then, he lowered his voice and spoke, "Brotherly, don't be impatient. Venerable Mei won't make things difficult for your young master even if he loses. Taking 10,000 steps back, your young master would at most lose a pair of legs. His life would definitely not be in danger. But the three holy lands will find someone to take responsibility for this Xian beast catastrophe if we don't agree to Venerable Mei's conditions, right? Brotherly, you, he. But Li Ju Tian wanted to say that he had already swallowed the Leopard King's Xian Dan. So, how could he spit it out? But he swallowed the words back. The Leopard King had already swallowed the Xian Dan. But he had sealed it in his dantian with his Xian Qi. So, he was waiting for the bear's heart to take it. Therefore, the Xian Dan was still intact. But what would Lei Baoyu and Buquang Feng think if they knew that the Xian Dan was still intact? Li Ju Tian put himself in their shoes. And he asked himself if he were in their shoes. In fact, he would have certainly tried to snatch it. As for the current him, how would he be able to contend against the joint forces of these two veteran supreme martial artists? Lei Baoyu and Buquang Feng saw that Li Ju Tian was speechless. So, they assumed that he had approved of the conditions. Then, they turned to Venerable Mei and asked, "Venerable Mei, can we start the battle now?" Venerable Mei nodded slowly. She didn't speak any more nonsense. She raised her hand, and a small golden sword flew out of her hand. It emitted a whistling sound in the air. It seemed as if a gale was blowing. It was the sound of that small sword tearing through the air. It was reasonable to say that the small sword should have been flying at a very fast speed since it could produce such a loud sound. In fact, it should have been close to the speed of sound. But it was moving very slowly. In fact, it was twice as fast as an ordinary arrow. However, a golden sword light was getting thicker and thicker behind the golden sword. It seemed as if a golden dragon had soared to the ninth heaven. It stretched across the sky above the plaza between the two mountains until it was nailed to the other side of the mountain. Then, the roar of the dragon and the roar of the tiger continued to echo. Battle order. Li Ju Tian raised his right hand at the same time. And a fire arrow exploded in the air. A cruel look appeared on his face. Bear Mountain roared like a thunderclap from the ninth heaven. He took the lead, and rushed out. The tiger, the leopard, and the bear of the other three Xian beasts followed behind him. They were led by the three Xian beast kings. And they rushed out like a gust of wind. There were exactly 4,000 Xian beasts in total. On the other side, Jun Wuyi quickly waved the flag in his hand. And the 4,000-man army formation changed into a cone-shaped formation in a very short time. But it was in order to stay put. Jun Wuyi wasn't aware of the inside story. But he knew that the 4,000 soldiers on his side were at a disadvantage against the 4,000 Xian beasts of the other side. The difference in strength was several times greater. So, it wouldn't be a confrontation between the two sides if they didn't use any strategy. Instead, it would be a one-sided massacre. His original plan was to dig a trap in front of them. Then, the 4,000 soldiers would wait for the Xian beasts to come closer. Then, they would fire their concealed weapons at the same time. And they would get rid of some of the weaker Xian beasts. Then, they would use their superior strength to break through the encirclement. In other words, they would gather their strongest experts in groups of 7 or 8. And they would attack and kill some of the Xian beasts regardless of the consequences. Then, the others would try their best to stall for time. And they would return as soon as the battle was over. Sacrifices would be unavoidable in this way. But it would greatly increase their chances of victory. At the very least, they would be able to inflict considerable damage on the other side. As for whether they would win or lose in the end, Junwui didn't consider it. But even if they died in battle, they would die a heroic death. It must be said that, even when facing such a strong Xian beast army, Junwui's strategy was quite effective. In fact, it was the most ideal arrangement. If they acted according to this strategy, even if they couldn't avoid being completely annihilated in the end, they would still be able to achieve great results. They would be able to kill as many Xian beasts as possible. Optimistically, they would be able to kill about half of the Xian beasts. Using a mere 4,000 soldiers to fight against the same number of Xian beasts, but with several times the strength of the Xian beasts. If they could really kill half of the Xian beasts, this battle could definitely be considered a victory for the humans. But, no matter how perfect the strategy was, or how outstanding the plan was, if there was a problem with the executors, then everything would only be a theory on paper. Can you expect the people who will fight this battle to listen to Junwui's commands? Not to mention that there were many people who had been instructed to kill Junwui. And, these people just happened to be the strongest experts on the human side. The massacre that could have been avoided, or at least wouldn't have come so soon, hiding like turtles and waiting for the enemy to charge at us, isn't this courting death? Brothers, don't listen to that cowardly general's bullshit strategy. Follow me and kill. We can easily kill level 6 or 7 Xian beasts with our strength. On average, each person can kill 1 or 2 Xian beasts. Isn't victory right in front of us? There was a commotion in the rear, and the 700 people of the Shui Han Manor suddenly rushed out. Their original position was at the very back of the line. So, their charge directly smashed the front line that had been arranged by Junwui. The formation had collapsed even before the battle had even begun. But the 700 people of the Shui Han Manor still didn't care. They rushed out under the leadership of the 3 Xian experts of the Shui Han Manor. I'll laugh twice, and get drunk today. I'll look up to the heavens, and have a clear conscience. The past is like the wind, and tomorrow is like the water. I'll disappear without a trace, and I'll catch up in the future. Those who read my books are my brothers and sisters. Who in this world is worthy of insulting me and cursing me? I'll ignore the jumping clowns. I'll use my heart to sprinkle my wisdom. I'll write to you, and get drunk with you. The world's scandals will never recede. I'll cover my ears, and sleep when I'm tired. The world is small, and who will comfort me? The internet is illusory, and I'll accompany you. I'll write without regret, and I'll face each other with lofty character. I'll look again tomorrow, and I'll see a myriad of colors. I'll be depressed today, and I'll vent my resentment. I'll look at you with a smile, and I won't take it to heart. I'll go to sleep after I've finished my drunken talk. Chapter 355. With them taking the lead, the masses naturally responded. Then, the 12 men from the Silver Blizzard City also rushed out. Then, the aristocratic families also rushed out like a tide. Junwui's army was at the rear. The 300-strong army was almost alone in the rear. It had to be said that the words of the Shui Han Manor were extremely provocative. After all, victory would be right in front of their eyes if they could kill 1 or 2 Xian beasts on average. However, how many people could kill Xian beasts with ease? Did they really think that they were as strong as Shen Xian or Tian Xian? However, it had to be said that the 3,000-strong army had a tacit understanding with each other. The Shui Han Manor's army had suddenly turned left after they had rushed out, and had taken a roundabout route to outflank the Xian beasts. Meanwhile, the Silver Blizzard City's army had taken a roundabout route to the right. The army behind them didn't know why, and had taken a roundabout route. However, the army behind them didn't know whether they should go left or right. So, they hesitated for a moment. However, they were startled by the sight of thousands of Xian beasts rushing towards them. So, they hastily dodged and followed them. However, the commander-in-chief of the army, Jun Wui's 300-strong army, was completely exposed to the sharp claws of the Xian beasts. The 4,000-strong army of Xian beasts surged forward and roared. Shameless! Too shameless! Dongfang Wenqing roared in anger. Duanmu Chao Fan, the head of the Duanmu family, was trembling in anger. He stammered, he, his mother, the other head of the Duanmu family, Sikong and Ye's face sank. He was furious in his heart as he roared, "Damn it! Don't stutter when you're in front of us. You'll be depressed to death if you don't get swallowed by the Xian beasts." Fu *K. I haven't finished cursing yet. Duanmu Chao Fan was so angry that his speech became a lot smoother. Especially the first word, Fu *K. Because it was only this one word, there was no possibility of stuttering. It was truly enunciated with perfect articulation. The word F***K was so majestic and powerful. Say no more. Sikong and Yi flew into a rage. Black lines appeared on his forehead, and he hastily pulled out his sword. But, a golden tiger had already pounced on him. Tearing and biting, its tail was like an iron rod that swept away thousands of soldiers. The most outrageous thing was that this tiger actually knew how to use moves. Moreover, it seemed to be fighting instinctively, but in fact, it was very exquisite. The strong wind whistled, and it advanced and retreated in an orderly manner. It was as if he was sitting on a bench with his buttocks bare. Xian beasts knew martial arts, who could stop them? At practically the exact same moment, the dark beast army that was like tidewater instantly drowned them, and Dongfang Wenqing and the others were facing a few formidable opponents at the 8th or 9th rank. However, what puzzled them, who were on full alert, was that these extremely ferocious and evil Xian beasts seemed to be demonstrating their strength and greeting them. They just circled around and then gone. On the top of the mountain, all the spectators were speechless. Supreme Absolute Heaven, is this how you arrange your troops? You've sent out all your experts, and you're roaming around in all directions. You're not participating in the battle, and you've exposed your commander. This is a formation of certain death. This would have been the crime of putting the commander in danger on a regular battlefield. Not a single one of those 3,000 men would have survived. Lei Baoyu pointed his finger at the battlefield in disbelief as he asked Li Ju Tian. Then, he shook his head and smiled. No wonder you weren't willing to accept the conditions of the decisive battle. You never intended to win. I presume that many of those 4,000 men are your enemies, right? What a brilliant strategy. Bu Kuangfeng also continued, that commander is a genuine expert in the art of war. He had laid down the blade ceiling formation at the beginning. It's a defensive formation, and it's an offensive formation. It can't be used to defeat the Xian beasts. But, it can at least stabilize the situation for the time being. Moreover, he had laid down many traps beforehand. So, he could have reduced the casualties to a minimum. And, he could have used the momentum of the enemy's attack to launch a counterattack if he had been able to survive the first wave of the Xian beast's attack. But, it's a pity that he's been harmed by a vile person, This villain was obviously referring to Li Ju Tian. Great Master Li Ju Tian's face turned green and red. He felt very embarrassed. Lei Baoyu and Bu Kuangfeng weren't from the military. But, they had more than 100 years of wisdom. So, they had extraordinary eyesight and knowledge. So, how could they not see through such an obvious trap? Bu Kuangfeng was obviously dissatisfied with Li Ju Tian. So, he continued, Great Master Li Ju Tian, it seems that you don't care about your son's legs. Otherwise, why would you act like this? And, why would you act like this for your son? It's unimaginable. Li Ju Tian's face turned red. He didn't know how to respond. So, he stammered, but couldn't speak. How could he have known that Hermitage had sent his men to watch the battle? He had only thought of his reputation in the secular world. So, who would dare to say anything even if someone was dissatisfied with his actions? And, even if someone were to object, they would disappear after a short time. After all, no one would want to offend the second great master for a dead man. However, Lei Baoyu and Buquang Feng had arrived, and Li Ju Tian had been left in a difficult situation. He had lost face in front of the three holy lands. And, he had lost face because of it. But, he had also lost his son. He didn't know that Hermitage's men hadn't only come to watch the battle. Jun Moxie was also very anxious at this time. He had discovered that he had overlooked two people, Duanmu Chao Fan and Sikong Yi. Jun Wui's men were more scared than hurt. Everyone was surrounded by several high-level Xian beasts, but nothing had happened to them. On the contrary, Duanmu Chao Fan and Sikong Yi were surrounded by perils. Sikong Yi had been besieged by more than 5 or 6 Xian beasts in a short time. His clothes were ragged, and he was flustered. Duanmu Chao Fan was in an even more difficult situation. The Duanmu family's lord roared again and again, and slashed with all his might. But, his left hand would lift the lapel of his robe to cover his back from time to time. Jun Moxie flew over, and discovered that the Duanmu family's lord had a big hole in his buttocks. He didn't know which Xian beast had bitten him, but his firm buttocks had been exposed. There were also a few scratches on it, and it looked very ambiguous. Jun Moxie found it funny and angry at the same time. He quickly sprinkled some medicinal powder on the two men's heads, and then quickly retreated. Sikong Yi was roaring again and again. But, he unexpectedly discovered that the pressure on him had been greatly reduced. The Xian beasts that were about to pounce on him looked at him with a puzzled look in their eyes. Then, they snorted, wagged their tails, and left. Then, the tide-like Xian beast army split into 4 groups, and fought against the Xian practitioners on the other 2 sides under the command of the 3 Xian beast kings. Only a few Xian beasts were left on Jun Wuyi's side, which was supposed to be attacking. These Xian beasts were 9th-level Xian beasts. Their fighting strength was extremely high, and they could kill this small group of people by opening their mouths. But, they didn't have the slightest intention of attacking. Sikong Yi was puzzled. There was only one Xian beast in front of him. It was extremely intelligent, and it was winking at him. Winking? What are you doing? I'm in the middle of a war. Why do you have this kind of expression? Sikong Yi stared at him with his ox-like eyes. He didn't understand what was going on. That golden tiger Xian beast was a little anxious. It raised its claws, and pointed to the surroundings. Then, it roared and pounced over. Its momentum was very frightening. Sikong Yi hastily used all his strength to resist. He didn't have the confidence in his heart. But, he immediately discovered that the beast's momentum seemed to be very powerful. But, it didn't have much power. He was puzzled. Then, he saw the beast wagging its tail and winking. This time, Sikong Yi finally understood. Crap! It wants me to pretend to fight with it. He turned his head, and saw that everyone else had realized this earlier than him. Each person faced a Xian beast, and shouted at it. The Xian beasts also roared loudly. But, they saw that their swords were like lightning, but they weren't accurate. Their claws were like the wind, but they missed. However, the most powerful person among them was the commander-in-chief of the army, Jun Wui. He was facing the crazy siege of 2 9th-level Xian beasts. However, he was still sitting calmly in his wheelchair. In fact, not even a single strand of his hair was messed up. The 2 earth-cracking bears, each weighing several thousand kilograms, were jumping and scuttling around. They were roaring loudly, and their paws were pounding the ground. Even a great master-level expert like Shen Xian would have to evade this joint attack. However, Jun Wui didn't panic. Instead, he casually brandished his sword. It didn't seem to be very exquisite. But the two earth-cracking bears at the peak of 9th level hastily evaded it. Then, they pounced again, brandished their sword, and retreated. What's going on? Sikong and Ye's mouth was wide open. His jaw had almost been dislocated. He turned his head to look, and saw that Duanmu Chao Fan had also escaped from this dangerous and embarrassing situation. He was in a flurry, and was stripping the clothes off the corpses. Then, he wrapped them around his waist, and turned them into an apron. However, this apron only covered the back of his body. Duanmu Chao Fan's opponent was also a 9th level golden tiger. So, Duanmu Chao Fan simply threw his sword to the ground, and concentrated on tying the apron. However, that golden tiger fiercely rushed over. Then, it jumped over Duanmu Chao Fan's head with a schwat sound. Then, it jumped back with a schwat sound. Moreover, it seemed to be very angry as it faced upwards and roared. It attacked the air, the ground, and the rocks. But, it didn't attack Duanmu Chao Fan's body. It was as if Duanmu Chao Fan's body possessed the legendary, mysterious handle. So, he would be seriously injured if he were to touch it. Holy sh*t. Sikong and Ye's mouth was wide open. Then, he heard a cracked sound, and his jaw was truly dislocated. He couldn't help but let out a blood-curdling scream. The golden tiger jumped in fright. It hastily stopped jumping, and tilted its head to look at Sikong and Yi in suspicion. How can this man be so fragile? I haven't even touched him. But, he opened his mouth, and got injured. What kind of physique is this? Or, did I inadvertently cultivate the legendary King's tyrannical aura? What the hell are you doing, fried rice? We're in a Fu*King war. You're wearing an apron. Don't tell me that you want to cook fried rice. Sikong and Yi couldn't help but be in a joking mood since the danger had passed. He rubbed his chin with his hands. Then, he opened his mouth to speak. Chapter 356. Fu*K. Elder brother, don't say it. You say it's difficult, but it's even more difficult for me. Sikong and Yi held his head and groaned. He hadn't been injured by the siege of countless profound beasts. But Duanmu Chao Fan's words had almost caused him to suffer internal injuries. They didn't know what was going on. But Jun Wui and the others understood in their hearts. There must be an expert helping us. But we must put on a show. We can't betray the host of this show, right? Therefore, Duanmu Chao Fan brandished his long sword. The silver light flickered, and his footwork was graceful. He displayed his martial skills to the fullest. He fought with the golden tiger in front of him. He wanted to grab the tiger's tail. But the golden tiger wouldn't let him. Therefore, the man and the beast fought endlessly. Bailey Luo Yun's performance was even more outstanding. He was worthy of the title of genius. He was fighting a level 9 profound beast with Yu Xian's body. Moreover, he was attacking and defending at the same time. He didn't fall into a disadvantageous position. He fought fiercely, and the dust flew everywhere. He even faintly gained the upper hand. As for his two uncles, Tian Xian, they were a bit unlucky. They had already been turned into minced meat by the level 8 profound beasts. This situation was very ironic. These two men were confident that they could escape with their strength. They would have turned around and left as soon as they confirmed Bailey Luo Yun's death. Bailey Luo Yun was a genius. But, he was only Yu Xian's cultivation level. So, it wasn't their turn to die. To put it bluntly, they were the executioners. However, they hadn't expected that the damned criminal wouldn't die even after being beheaded thousands of times. The two men were dumbstruck. They were surrounded by many high-level profound beasts in the blink of an eye. Yu Xian's Bailey Luo Yun had unleashed his strength to kill them. But Tian Xian couldn't move even an inch. He was eaten alive. The two men didn't understand what was going on even when they died. It could be said that he was truly a confused ghost. Blood-curdling screams could be heard everywhere on the battlefield. The Shuihan Manor, the Silver Blizzard City, and the Shuihan Manor had originally planned to retreat as soon as the Central Army collapsed. At this moment, they'd fallen into a frenzied encirclement of death. Fresh blood sprayed out from time to time, and severed limbs were thrown into the sky from time to time. Every single moment, someone perished. Bear Mountain's majestic aura swept through the Shuihan Manor's ranks with the Tiger King and the Lion King at his back. The three Xian beasts relied on their bronze skin and iron bones to ignore any incoming attacks as they charged into the ranks of the Shuihan Manor's troops. Their attacks were unstoppable, and they were rampaging through the Shuihan Manor's ranks. The Shuihan Manor had fallen into a state of chaos, and had been divided into two groups. Then, the Shuihan Manor had been divided into four groups, each fighting their own battles. The Xian beasts had surrounded the Shuihan Manor, and had begun to scream in despair. However, Jun Wuyi and the others who were supposed to die in the original plan hadn't suffered many casualties. Moreover, none of the main characters had been injured. The great masters and Shen Xian's eyeballs had nearly popped out of their sockets on the hilltop. What's going on? This is too outrageous. So that's how it is. I finally understand. Solitary Eagle twirled a strand of his hair in astonishment. You understand? Bu Feng nodded in bewilderment. What do you understand? Hurry up and explain it to this old man. Brother Bu, you still haven't figured it out? Solitary Eagle proudly pointed his finger. So, Li Ju Tian is planning to cleanse his Shuihan Manor, and then harm the Silver Blizzard City as well. Li Ju Tian's meaning is clear. I'm not feeling well, and you're not feeling well either. But, I'm happy with my misery, and I'm happy with my humiliation. But, can you do the same? You're a bit more understanding. Lei Baoyu and Bu Feng spat at the same time. Even a fool could see that Li Ju Tian was shocked. How can he purge the Shuihan Manor? The Shuihan Manor was Li Ju Tian's life's blood and sweat. So, its position in his heart was only slightly inferior to that of his only son, Li Tingyun. Li Ju Tian wasn't a fool. So, why would he dig his own grave? But, what's going on in front of us if that's not the reason? Li Tingyun's mouth was open. His face was deathly pale, and his lips were trembling. His expression was sluggish, and he suddenly felt a heartfelt regret. He could faintly feel that he had lost half of his legs. Li Ju Tian clenched his hands tightly. He was extremely furious in his heart. He wouldn't be able to live if he still couldn't see that he had been schemed against at this point. However, there was one thing that he couldn't figure out. Who has this kind of ability? Who can command the Xian Beast King of Tian Fa? And, this is such a huge farce. Ah! A blood-curdling screech was heard. One of the Shen Xian experts of the Shuihan Manor had been struck by Bear Mountain's palm 3 times in a row. And, he spurted out blood as he retreated. Bear Mountain grinned maliciously, and rushed forward. His palm and fists bombarded each other a few times. Then, he suddenly launched a flying kick, and their legs intersected. That Shen Xian expert had been seriously injured. So, the strength of his body couldn't compare to that of a Xian Beast King like Bear Mountain. So, a crack sound was heard as his leg was broken. However, Bear Mountain's kick hadn't exhausted its momentum, and had ferociously kicked that expert's waist. His severed leg flew into the sky with a whooshing sound. The Spirit Xian expert's body was also kicked into the sky at the same time. Blood spurted out of his 7 orifices at the same time. Bear Mountain's huge body leapt up, and chased after that expert's body in the air. His fists were quick and fierce. Bang! 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 His fists landed on that expert's body a dozen times in a row. The sound of bones breaking echoed in a continuous manner. Big Bear let out a loud roar, and grabbed that man's thighs with his hands. Then, he hissed, and his chest muscles bulged. Then, he let out a loud shout, and tore that spirit Xian expert into two halves in the air. His internal organs spilled out on the ground with a crashing sound. The battlefield was overwhelmed with horror. Bear Mountain laughed twice as he fell to the ground. His body was covered in blood as he went on a killing spree, like a tiger in a flock of sheep. Li Ju Tian's entire body shook. He couldn't help but take a step forward. His mouth was slightly open, and his expression was one of pain. The Lord of Tianfa also glanced at him from the corner of his eyes the moment he moved. It was obvious that he would have followed Li Ju Tian if he had attacked. Li Ju Tian had the impulse to concede defeat several times as he watched the flesh and blood flying in all directions. However, he tried his best to control himself, and didn't make such a decision. In fact, he maintained a calm and indifferent expression on his face. It seemed as if the people who were bleeding and sacrificing themselves weren't his own men. The human side had been doomed to suffer a crushing defeat since the beginning of the battle. This was because the disparity in strength between the two sides was too great. For example, the Tianfa Forest's army was like a well-prepared elite army. But the human allied army was like an unprepared and inexperienced mob. Tianfa would have had to pay a huge price if they had followed Jun Wuyi's strategy. But Tianfa would have needed to pay a huge price to achieve victory. After all, there were a few experts in the allied army. And they could have made up for the lack of military strength if they'd had good strategic coordination. But when the allied forces had internal strife and refused to obey orders, the defeat of the allied forces was already a foregone conclusion. There was no chance of a fluke. There was no chance of a turnaround. There was a trap, but there was no follow-up. The Xian beasts would fall into it and jump out again. However, Li Ju Tian wouldn't be able to afford to concede defeat if he wanted to preserve his strength. He was the second great master of the Xian continent. So, he couldn't afford to lose face. Moreover, the Lord of Tianfa wasn't far away. Li Ju Tian would have needed to ask for his permission even if he wanted to concede defeat. But looking at his performance, it was undoubtedly a fool's dream to ask for his consent. It was absolutely impossible. Therefore, Li Ju Tian could only pray in his heart. Damn it! Can't you run away if you can't win? Will the Tianfa forest chase you to the ends of the earth if you run away? They only want to win at this moment. However, he hadn't run at first. But, it was too late now. He had wanted to set up a trap to deal with Jun Wuyi. But, he had gone for wool and come home shorn. Moreover, he had almost lost his rice jar. The three Xian beast kings were eyeing them like tigers watching their prey. 3,700 fierce Xian beasts were divided into several small legions, and they were desperately attacking. The Shuihan Manor's 700 men had been reduced to less than 200. The Silver Blizzard City's men were quite strong. So, they hadn't suffered any losses. But, they were clearly exhausted. The 3rd, 6th, and 9th elders had formed a small encirclement with the Silver Blizzard City's 7 swords. The 3 Shenxian beasts and the Silver Blizzard City's 7 swords were equivalent to 10 strong Shenxian beasts joining hands. Xiao Han and Mu Shuetong were protected inside the encirclement. Moreover, Xiao Han and Mu Shuetong weren't mediocre. Therefore, the Xian beasts wouldn't be able to attack for a short period of time. However, they could only protect themselves in the midst of the vast Xian beast tide. However, Xiao Han's eyes were bloodshot. He was so manic that he was about to explode. He stamped his feet and shouted, "Why? Why aren't the Xian beasts attacking Junwui? Why hasn't that cripple died yet? I want him dead. I want him dead. Why hasn't he died at this point? Junwui. Why haven't you died? Ah. Junwui's situation was very strange. Moreover, Xiao Han's mood had changed from taking pleasure in others' misfortune to being besieged. In fact, it seemed as if he was under the pressure of death. Xiao Han's mind couldn't bear such great joy, great sorrow, and great ups and downs. So, he kept shouting and shouting like a madman. Xiao Han wanted Jun Wui dead. No outsider could have imagined how desperate he was. Jun Wui had wanted to kill Xiao Han with his sword. In fact, he had wanted to do so for more than 10 years. But, why wouldn't Xiao Han want to kill Jun Wui? He had wanted to kill Jun Wui for more than 10 years. In fact, he had wanted to kill Jun Wui a few months earlier. The other group consisted of the experts dispatched by the big clans. But the strongest of them were at the initial stage of the Spirit Xian realm and the high stage of the Sky Xian realm. They were still struggling to hold on. However, the rest of them had already been annihilated. Jun Wui would have died if the battle had gone according to Jun Wui's plan. However, the Shen Xian experts would have been able to ensure that none of them would die. They would have been defeated, but they would have been able to return safely. In fact, more than half of Tian Xian's experts would have been able to survive. Jun Wui was confident that he would have been able to do it even if he had been defeated. However, these people had been intimidated by Li Ju Tian's tyrannical power. So, they had chosen to side with him. They had followed the Shui Hun Manor's team to rush out. However, they had been gloating over the misfortune of the Shui Hun Manor. So, they hadn't thought that their actions had ruined their last chance of survival. The more despicable a person was, the faster they would die in such a cruel war. Wasn't this also a warning? This one-sided massacre was finally coming to an end. It was unknown when the screams had become sparse, but the roars had become like broken bellows. Only Jun Wui and his men's energy hadn't diminished. They were still going back and forth. In fact, they seemed to be enjoying themselves. In fact, this had become the most intense battle in the entire battlefield. Jun Dashao finally revealed himself. He slowly walked up the hillside, and walked towards the solitary eagle. He had already made all the arrangements by this time. And, everything was going smoothly according to the script that he had designed. More than half of those who were supposed to die have died. And, I don't think any of those who weren't supposed to die will die. I've said this before, you'll have to prepare for a funeral if you want to frame us. Jun Moxie slowly walked up the hill. His clothes were fluttering in the wind. His handsome face had an indifferent and cruel expression on it. In this battle, no one would have thought that this seemingly weak and frail youngster would single-handedly direct such a grand tragicomedy. This youngster looked like he was only at the level of Yu Xian. The originally tragic side, the side that was powerless to reverse the situation, was forcefully turned into the side of comedy. And the other side had been full of confidence and excitement. They had been plotting and plotting to take pleasure in the misfortune of the other side. But, they were now in a complete tragedy. Jun Moxie was like an unknown master of the art. He was hiding behind the scenes, and plotting the entire situation. Not only had he schemed against himself, but he had also schemed against his enemies. He hadn't missed a single detail. He had Yu Xian's cultivation. But, he had schemed against the Shen Xian Great Master, and Tian Xian Earth Xian experts. But, so what? What was meant to be a tragedy would never become a comedy. Such an act could be said to be able to create clouds with a turn of his hand, and rain with a turn of his hand. Everything was under his control. Now, it was time to check the fruits of victory. It was also time for his side to be elated. How could Jun Moxie, the only great director who had planned everything, not show up? How could he not enjoy it? When frustrated, one should laugh wildly. When complacent, one should laugh even more. Laugh to your heart's content. Be complacent, sing loudly. Life is short. Why have so many misgivings? Life is short. Enjoy it while you can, and sing drunkenly. If you cry when frustrated, others will look down on you. So, you must laugh. Even if no one is watching, you must laugh for yourself. If you are indifferent when you are complacent, others will say that you are smug and pretentious. So, I must be smug. I don't like to pretend to be pretentious because I want to be awesome. If I am complacent, why do I have to pretend to be sad? I find it too tiring. I am complacent. I am awesome. Whoever dares to mock me as a madman should first ask themselves if they have the achievements of this madman. If not, then shut up. Get lost. There's a hole in your stinky socks. I won't pee in your pot. What does it have to do with me? What does it have to do with me? This was June Moxie's philosophy of life in this life. Sing loudly when you get something. Stop when you lose it. Worry and hate. Drink today and get drunk today. Worry tomorrow and worry tomorrow. Chapter 357. Good boy. Solitary Eagle didn't understand what was going on. But, he knew that June Moxie had something to do with it. Otherwise, why would he have warned him not to get involved? He couldn't help but grab Solitary Eagle's shoulder as he saw him approach. Then, he shook him violently, and burst into laughter. June Moxie laughed mischievously as he broke free from Solitary Eagle's grasp. Then, he stood on the hillside, and watched the battle from a distance. The corners of his mouth slightly pursed, and formed a cruel arc. Solitary Eagle, how was your fight with Feng Wanyun? June Moxie asked. June Moxie hadn't seen it, but he was sure that the two men had fought. Feng Wanyun had challenged him for decades. So, how could he let go of this opportunity? The solitary falcon had just learned a new move, and felt that he had a chance of winning. So, how could he not show off his strength? Ahem. I was lucky. The solitary falcon's mouth cracked open, and his deadpan face was brimming with a sense of pride, but he was trying his best to maintain an indifferent expression. However, he didn't know that such an expression would make anyone want to punch him in the face. June Moxie smiled proudly as he whispered in his ear, "Did you give him a good beating?" The solitary falcon grinned and said, "That's not true, we've become friends after all. We're just exchanging pointers, wahahaha." The solitary falcon couldn't help but laugh out loud. But, it wasn't surprising that he had beaten up an old rival of 30 or 40 years. Moreover, he had beaten him up with absolute superiority. Anyone else would have done the same. In fact, they would have been even more proud. To tell the truth, our eagle sovereign was already extremely calm and indifferent. What are you laughing at? Solitary Eagle. Are you so happy about the defeat of the Allied forces? Li Ju Tian suddenly turned his head. His eyes were like a sharp sword as he looked at Solitary Eagle. It seemed as if he was about to explode. Li Ju Tian was extremely depressed. And, he needed to find someone to vent his anger on. He didn't expect that there would be someone laughing so happily in front of him. Wasn't this a clear slap to his face? Mocking me for going for wool and coming home shorn, fuck. Li Ju Tian, are you fucking done with me today? Solitary Eagle was having a good time, so when Qing Xiang was questioned, especially in front of June Moxie, he felt even more embarrassed. He immediately flew into a rage. Someone died in your family, and you don't want others to laugh at you? What kind of logic was this? Today, you keep finding trouble with me. Do you think that I, Solitary Eagle, am made of mud? Solitary Eagle went berserk. This time, he was completely enraged. Damn it, your son offended Feng Wanyun, and I saved his life, but you fucking got angry at me. Now, I can't even smile. Do you think I'm a slave of your Shuihan manner? Li Ju Tian snorted coldly, and walked over. June Moxie quickly revealed an expression as if he was watching a play, and dodged to the side. In fact, he even pushed Solitary Eagle, as if to say, "Get him. Stop." A voice filled with extreme grief and indignation rang out like a clap of thunder. Li Ju Tian and Solitary Eagle were about to attack when they heard this voice, and jumped in fright. They looked up, and saw that Venerable Mei was standing not far from them. He was staring at Jun Moxie. His whole body was trembling, and his eyes had turned blood red. Venerable Mei had discovered that bastard the moment Jun Moxie had arrived. This sudden and shocking discovery had nearly caused her to faint on the spot. Venerable Mei's heart was beating crazily as she looked at that handsome face. It was the same face that she had been torturing in her dreams for the past few days. Venerable Mei felt as if her heart was beating crazily, and the blood in her body had rushed to her head. She found it difficult to breathe, and she was seeing stars in front of her eyes. She gasped for breath a few times, and finally calmed down. This wasn't because she was pleasantly surprised, nor because she was infatuated with him. It was incomparable grief, and monstrous humiliation. The heavens have mercy on me. I've finally seen this person again. This extremely despicable, shameless, filthy, and lowly kid wouldn't be satisfied even if he were to be executed 10,000 times. Venerable Mei struggled to calm his emotions. Then, he finally suppressed his anger and floated over. He tried his best to control himself, but he couldn't stop his body from trembling. Li Ju Tian and Solitary Eagle had already recovered by this time. Li Ju Tian shouted, and took the initiative to attack. He was the second great master. So, how could he be stopped just because someone told him to? Moreover, the person who had told him to stop was his enemy. Solitary Eagle didn't dare to be negligent in the face of the second great master's attack. So, he naturally had to fight with all his strength. Who would have thought that Li Ju Tian would disappear before Solitary Eagle could even launch a counterattack? Venerable Mei's anger had reached its peak when he heard Li Ju Tian say, "Stop." Li Ju Tian had dared to attack in such an unscrupulous manner. Venerable Mei couldn't help but feel the anger that had been building up in his body for hundreds of years ignite at this moment. He angrily rushed forward, and grabbed Li Ju Tian's neck. Then, he heavily pressed him to the ground. Li Ju Tian's head smashed against a rock with a loud bang. The rock that had been sitting on his buttocks was smashed into pieces. Then, Venerable Mei slapped him across the face. Bang! A loud sound was heard. It was a loud sound. It was a loud sound. The slap had produced a loud sound. I told you to stop. Didn't you hear me, you bastard? You old bastard! Venerable Mei moved his arms and legs at the same time as if he was kicking a sandbag. In an instant, he had thrown hundreds of punches and kicks. It was obvious that he had lost control of his mind and had gone mad. He shouted as he punched, "Are you deaf? I won't let you hear me. Can't you hear me? How dare you not hear me? How could you not hear me, you bastard? You damned tortoise, you despicable, shameless bastard, you actually pretended not to hear." Li Ju Tian was the second great master. But, he didn't even have the strength to fight back. He could only look at Venerable Mei with grief and indignation. The second great master was so humiliated that he felt like committing suicide. I want to die. Li Ju Tian's tragedy was inexplicable. I attacked Solitary Eagle. What did that do to you, Venerable Mei? Why did you hit me again? However, Li Ju Tian didn't know that his bad luck was the same as the last time he had said, I trust you. It was all because of Jun Moxie. And, the main culprit had appeared this time. Venerable Mei had lost all reason in his rage. But, he had disobeyed Venerable Mei's words. So, how could he not be oppressed? Li Ju Tian would have understood if he had known the reason. In fact, he wouldn't have suffered a loss from those 2 beatings. But, the problem was that he didn't know the reason. Therefore, Li Ju Tian's grief and indignation had reached its limit. He had been repeatedly beaten in front of the world's heroes. And, he had been slapped in the face this time. This is a deliberate humiliation. How will I have the face to face the heroes of the world from now on? You can't bully people like this. You flipped out the last time I spoke to you. And, you didn't like it when I attacked Solitary Eagle. What should I do? What should I do to make you like me? Li Ju Tian wanted to shout these words out loud. But, he couldn't do it. Because, Lei Baoyu and Bu Guangfeng suddenly cried out in alarm, the power of the universe? The world cage. They looked at Venerable Mei with awe in their eyes. They had planned to step forward and mediate the situation. But, they couldn't help but take 2 steps back. Others might not know about the power of the universe. But, how could these 2 former great masters and the current hermitage not know about it? Transform the world into the universe, and gather the yin and yang to form the power. The universe is in my hands, and I am the ruler of the world. I can freely use the formidable power of the world to deal with my enemies. This was the power of the universe. Li Ju Tian's Xian Qi had reached perfection, but he hadn't been able to dodge Venerable Mei's attack. In fact, he hadn't even had the strength to fight back. It was obvious that he had been hit by one of the world's strength's world cage. The world had shrunk into a cage. And, the cage had locked down the opponent, and allowed him to do whatever he pleased. This was the true meaning of the world cage. It was a little exaggerated, but it was the truth. Venerable Mei had finally revealed her true strength when she had attacked in a fit of rage. The previous fight had only been a warm-up for him. Lei Baoyu and Bu Guangfeng looked at each other. They were secretly alarmed. Fortunately, we didn't attack. Otherwise, wouldn't we be the ones being slapped on the ground? The 2 of them sucked in a breath of cold air. Then, they heaved a sigh of relief. It wasn't that Li Ju Tian didn't want to evade, resist Venerable Mei's attack. But, he suddenly realized that he couldn't even move a finger. He didn't have the leeway to resist at all. He could only look on helplessly as Venerable Mei grabbed his neck, pressed him to the ground, and slapped him. But, he couldn't even make a sound. Venerable Mei had finally vented his anger. He threw Li Ju Tian to the ground as if he was throwing away a piece of trash. Then, he slowly turned around, and looked at Jun Moxie. His gaze was sharp and cold. In fact, it seemed as if he wanted to eat someone alive. Who's this brat? Venerable Mei's teeth clattered as he pointed at Jun Moxie. But, his eyes were looking at Solitary Eagle. My surname is Jun. I don't know why you're looking for me, Jun Moxie stepped forward, and answered first. Others might not know Solitary Eagle's temperament, but Jun Moxie was well aware of it. Venerable Mei's martial arts were matchless. But, no one could get anything out of Solitary Eagle's mouth in such a manner. Jun Moxie guessed that Solitary Eagle's reply would have been a stiff and unruly, "Who are you asking?" if he hadn't come out in a hurry. However, that would provoke the wrath of the mysterious Venerable Mei. And, the solitary falcon was bound to suffer just like Li Ju Tian had suffered a while ago. Therefore, Jun Moxie took the initiative to step forward. He and Venerable Mei didn't have any enmity in the past. So, he didn't think that there would be any big issues. Perhaps this Venerable Mei had noticed that he was well-rounded, and had a handsome face. So, he wanted to accept him as his successor. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.